Okay, let's call select to order. Meeting of the West Newbury Selectboard, November 7th, 2022. It is 7:15. This meeting is being broadcast on local cable TV and recorded for rebroadcast on the local cable channels and on the internet. And the meeting is also accessible by remote participation via Zoom. Still open positions on boards and commissions. To check that out if you'd like to volunteer to help work with the town, wnewbury.org/volunteer, and to subscribe to the town news and agendas, wnewbury.org/subscribe. Just want to make a note that this coming week will be the 11th will be Veterans Day, and just take a moment to think about that and what the veterans have contributed for our country and our freedoms and how it's going to help. That's what we're going to be. Our freedom to vote as we feel tomorrow. So it's just something to keep in the back of mind, and think of the veterans and the sacrifices that our men and women in our armed forces have done for us, and just don't blow it off. Just think about that on Veterans Day. First item on the regular business agenda is proposed maintenance program for town-owned cemeteries, and a request to install the Elmer Burnham plaque by the Historical Commission. Who's going to speak to that? Are you, Bob?
I guess I'm the one that's elected.
Okay.
Ooh, if I can move. I'm probably going to need some help from Lisa here. Before I start with the cemetery thing, town meeting had voted to allow the Historic Commission to do ground penetrating radar at the Allen's House Cemetery. I just want you to know it's been done. We did it the week after town meeting, and they found 12 graves. So we're going to find a way to mark them. At least we're not going to know who's there, but we'll know somebody's there. So I just want you to know that money, it's already been done. Bill's been submitted, and we'll go from there.
So what was the estimate of how many people you thought were buried there?
We figured it was about 10, because those is what we have.
Yeah.
The names is 10 we know of buried there.
Yeah.
And we found 12 spots. So, and there may be more.
Yeah.
But with the roots and everything else out there, it was a little difficult to tell whether it was an actual grave or there was something else in there that he wasn't sure of. But he suspects there's probably more than 12.
So you have, are they somehow marked now so you actually know
They're
where
marked with a green flag.
Yeah.
And there's a metal disc driven into the ground with a spike on the, so that if we need to go back out there with a metal detector, we can find it. And he's given us a map also, so we have a pretty good idea of what everything is. Just thought I'd pass that on.
Yeah.
The other thing we want to do is we'd like to clean up the Quaker Cemetery. It hasn't been done probably for about 10 or 12 years. It's in pretty tough shape, so it needs to be cleaned. At least all the heavy stuff out, like we did with the Allen's House Cemetery, clean it up. That way we can, again, preserve what's there and, make a record of it. Although we know who's buried there because they get gravestones that are marked. So that's a little bit better, a little easier.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think sounds like a good plan. What was the, I'm trying to recall, the funds for that, how are we Is that gonna be?
Well, there aren't any funds.
Yeah,
Well,
so,
For the
No,
filing,
I mean,
for
yeah,
the conservation commission is a filing, right?
yeah,
yeah, we have to do a filing with conservation.
Yeah, so
Commission.
there's a fee for that.
okay,
for
Be a fee on that.
okay.
There's also a proposed budget. It's
Right.
in the materials.
Right.
So looking for the proposed budget authorization and authorization to make the filing with the Conservation Commission, which is necessary for the Quaker Cemetery, but not the Armshouse Cemetery.
Yeah.
Right. I guess my question was, is this something we want to do in this fiscal year, or are you planning on just getting it on the budget for next year?
Do we want to just start with the slides? That way we all know what we're talking about?
Okay.
Or just that way, and I've got a screen share for those who are remote. Do you want to just kind of walk through them and I can advance them as we go?
Well, we can try. I've read them, and I'm hoping that what I'm talking about here. I don't know if many people know it or not, but towns are required, one, to provide a burial spot for its citizens, and two, to maintain some of the ones that are no longer being used, which is what we want to do, is maintain the existing system. You know, right now we have two that we really, if you will, taken care of. One was the Allen's house and this one. There may be others coming. I know there was a second or third one that the gentleman's wife just passed away, and I think they're looking to sell the property, and there's a cemetery on that property, so, and they don't want that to be disturbed somehow, so again, the town may wind up being caretakers of that one, so.
So the other cemeteries in town are owned by other entities than the town?
There are 4 active, which are owned by trustees, not the town. I think there's probably 7 or 8 more that are all on private property. And again, they're owned by private individuals, so,
Okay.
you know, so we have very little or nothing that we can do with them unless they ask and request and give us permission. But we'd like at least to, you know, start with, you know, doing this one. We would like to clean them up probably twice a year, spring and fall, just to make sure that any branches and stuff like that are cleaned out. You know, the leaves are fine, but then again, the annual salary could be somewhere between $800 and $2,000, you know, to maintain them. It's going to require, obviously, like I said before, an initial cleanup. Again, the heavy work like trees and that stuff is probably going to cost a little bit more. Again, we're going to need the conservation restriction or whatever we need to do with conservation commission, because it is bordering the Adamshire Reservoir. And again, I think we've already got a sign out there, but, you know, to maintain the sign, clean up.
So in answer to Archie's question, we would like to have it done when the ground is frozen, because that way there'll be the least disturbance, and also it's when the landscapers are more available. So that is the criterion we're thinking of, which may be sooner rather than town meeting later.
So where are you proposing that the money would come from?
Well, our historical commission budget is spent.
Right.
I don't know if we could ask for a transfer of reserve funds from FinCom, or if there's any other way, and if not, we'll just wait until the ground freezes again.
So would the annual cost be built into the historical commission budget or the DPW budget?
So I worked with Wayne on this, and obviously I don't know the numbers either, and this was his preferred way. I don't know, but I'm thinking it might make more sense for it to be DPW, because they would be the ones who would know the contracting and all of that.
I would say that this, that to use a reserve fund transfer might be, that would be up to the FinCom to see whether they would go for that or not, and argue whether it's an emergency expenditure, or and that's, I would leave that up to their discretion to make that call. And if that wouldn't fly, then perhaps we do have to wait until, add it to the budget for the forthcoming year, unless Wayne has some extra money in an account. That would be, I'm not gonna put that on him without him. I would say let's try and go to the FinCom first, see what they have to say, and it might be tough to get that argument, considering we just had a fall town meeting, and it might have flown if we'd done it then. But
That's fair.
but if the reserve fund transfer doesn't work, then perhaps Wayne could have some extra money in its budget to deal with it for this one time this year. I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I think Wayne is, I'm not trying to speak for Wayne, but he has mentioned before that, we are sort of coming into a time of the year where there is time frequently. There's never time to waste, but there's more availability than there is during, say, the season where they're mowing all the time. And, there are times of the year where there's more flexibility in how time is going to be.
But Wayne wanted to do it on an outside vendor basis, rather than having the.
Oh, okay. I hadn't realized that Wayne was the one who had suggested that.
Yeah.
But maybe for the one time big cleanup, they could do it this winter in the DPW, and then going forward, a contractor could.
That's a possibility. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it depends a lot on the season, and
Yeah.
obviously it's unseasonably
Snowy, yeah.
warm, so I think that there would be probably more manpower this season than some years where there might already be snow on the ground. But they're down a guy, but we do have someone who's starting soon.
And I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, with respect to the filing fees, that's something the select board could pay for out of our budget, $150.
Definitely,
I mean,
yeah.
or I don't know if it could be tacked onto the reserve fund request.
Yeah, no, I think that's a totally appropriate, and as it's under your care and custody, so I think it's appropriate to pay out of the select board operating expenses.
Does that sound all right?
Yeah.
If they are able to get
Sure.
that going this fall.
And if we were later in the fiscal year, it may be that the overall expense could be absorbed in the professional technical services. But the board's talked about a couple of other things, including Cortland Lane, and also potentially that we need a local match on the grant funding for the MVPs, or not the MVP, the MBTA communities, where we have to find that local match, and we don't have that budgeted. So if it was a normal year, we might be able to find that money, if we get to May or June, it might be there. But sitting here today, there's a couple of.
But also in May and June, it wouldn't really be.
Right, that's a piece.
The time would be off. So.
Are you okay with the filing? Do you need more time to the filing with the Conservation Commission?
No,
What
my only
process?
thought was I wondered if, so this is just going to be for the, that one, the Quaker Cemetery. I don't know if there can be like a kind of generic filing for cemetery maintenance, just so you don't have to do this each time.
I looked at you had mentioned the trail historical commission website a filing that would be repeated every 3 years.
Yeah.
So that it wouldn't be lost in the basement. And we can try to remember to do that, you know, with obviously review from the town and permissions and whatnot. So.
Yeah.
Does it make, given the 3-year limitation when a filing is made, does it make any sense to, before doing the Concom filing, does it make any sense to make sure there's going to be funding to do the work, that somehow the work is going to be done this year? Because otherwise you've basically given away a year.
That's a good point.
Well, so on the trail maintenance plan, there was a negative determination, so there's no refiling of that. So
If you look at what it says, the language says you have to make a filing every 3 years, unfortunately. Unfortunately, she needs to go upstairs.
I thought that when
that was the
I
whole reason
read
we
that
did it
too,
like
that once
Maybe,
would
you know,
go
if you're right,
forward.
I'd be really happy.
if it wasn't a negative determination, then I think it would have to file.
It wasn't a negative determination, it was not. But what I've been told by the Concom people is that we need to do it.
Okay, well, that's what Michelle said. Yeah.
But I'd love it if you were right, so.
Okay,
Make
I'll
me
follow
very
up with
happy.
Michelle and ask her.
But that's a really good point. If we don't have the money to do it, we shouldn't hurry up and file.
Right.
And waste time.
Right. Because then you'll give up one of your 3 years.
Right.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Would there be any opportunity for volunteers to help with this, like they did with the Alms House, or?
Well, volunteers are great, but someone needs to control them, and sometimes they're hard to control. Sometimes they can denude the land. So I'm not keen on, and the Quaker Cemetery is a little bit trickier than the Alms House Cemetery because it's not as easily accessed, and I'm hoping no one would again take earth moving equipment to a cemetery, but you just don't know. So
Okay. Fair enough.
Could I throw out one more, as long as we're talking about cemeteries? I think there's something that, not just you folks, but everybody needs to think about, is we are going to need a spot somewhere down the line, probably within the next 3 to 5 years, for a cemetery. 3 of the 4 we have are getting full. Bridge Street can only handle 3 full burials. The rest of them, they can do about 100 or so cremations, but they don't have the room for a full burial. And all the other 2 cemeteries, Bridge Street, Walnut Hill, and Merrimack Cemetery are all in basically the same mode. They're reaching their capacity.
On Chase Street,
J Street is good for the next 300 years. Because when the Knowles people family sold the property, their property, they gave them 100 foot by the whole length, so they've got more burial space out there than they can shake a stick at.
Yeah.
The other 3 cemeteries are very, very limited in what they have left.
Yeah.
So,
Can I speak to Chase, since
Sure.
I'm the president of rural?
Yeah.
We just surveyed, we have to get it ready, but Bob is correct. When it's done, we'll have, lots for the next 50 years. So we are the only one of the 4, privately owned cemeteries that actually does have a land.
and all I'm suggesting is that the town start thinking about 2 things. Number one, where are you going to put a new cemetery?
Death and taxes.
Well, that's, there's no way of cheating yourself out of it. And the other thing, I think, if you're gonna be doing something like that, I think we need to establish a cemetery commission to start kind of handling some of these things. The rest of them are all done by boards of trustees, which are private. But if the town is gonna do one, I think you're going to need a board of, or a cemetery commission. And that's all I'm gonna say on that. Just a thought. Just a thought.
There's no volunteering on that.
What's that?
I shouldn't hear volunteer.
So what about the plaque?
So what about the plaque?
this
Yeah.
is the plaque.
Oh, sorry.
And so Elmer Burton was was really cool. And he has a field named after him. And this plaque was on the house where he lived, and he spent summers in West Newbury even after he was the coach at Purdue and all this other stuff. So somehow it landed in the clerk's office, and then it landed at the Historical Commission, and we thought it could be put in the gazebo not far from where Burnham Field is. So that was the idea, but we're asking your permission to do that.
So I'm going to confess to a degree of ignorance here. Which field is Burnham Field?
The ball field, the original ball field. And in my own personal opinion, I think that's where it belongs because it was named after him and for him. But again,
But the overall area is referred to as Cameron Park.
it's referred as Cameron Park. It was originally started out as Burnham Field.
So which ball field?
The one that's on Bachelor Street.
Okay.
Right by the action code.
So there's no place closer to the field to install it?
I don't have strong feelings, but I did polish it, and it took a lot of polishing, and now it is coated, and I'm not gonna do it again. So it could be sheltered, or it can be out, and it just will get tarnished. So,
Oh, so that's, I didn't know if there was a place where it would be somewhat sheltered, but,
you know,
okay.
wherever everybody wants it is sort of my thought.
I
So
guess,
somewhere.
yeah, I guess the downside of putting it somewhere around the field is that there has been some discussion of some, greater plan for that field, for just how the field is configured at some point in time. I have no idea if that will actually happen, but, I know somebody in Parks and Rec has mentioned that as a possibility that we might consider in the future, because the circulation pattern is not great around the field. So I don't know how much we'd want to commit to putting it in place if, 5 or 10 years from now.
Well, it's easier to move
You
into
can move
metal
it.
than that one over there, I
Yeah.
would just say.
Yeah.
So you can put it somewhere, and if you decide you don't like it, you can move it too.
What about putting it in one of the dugouts?
That's what I was gonna say.
Dugouts, so the kids who are playing the game would actually, maybe would glance and say, who is this Elmer
Yeah.
Burnham guy? And then that starts a conversation.
Yeah.
I think if it's up in the gazebo, most people are standing outside the gazebo watching something happening inside. Whereas if it's in a dugout, kids might see it.
Yeah, I was thinking the dugout too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it
And
would
you
be
can do it
somewhat
inside.
sheltered. Yeah.
And then we can just maybe put a frame or something to protect it from the elements and keep it out of the sun.
Sounds fine to me.
So in a dugout, I don't want to sound cynical, but kids sometimes do things, and so would it be never myself when I was a kid, but is there any risk that it would
Electrify it.
Yeah, right.
I don't have any answers on that.
yeah,
You could put a piece of plexiglass.
yeah, maybe that'd be the thing to do is just
Or
cover.
say, feel free to touch, and then they wouldn't do it.
Right. Yeah, there you go. That's right.
I don't know.
So do we need a motion to approve the placement of the plaque?
If it is on,
But then it's not Park and Rec.
that's gonna be Park and Rec.
Right.
So
Oh,
we
yeah,
have to
good
have
point.
something there. And it's not just a formalistic thing, it's under their care and custody, so they would need to vote that. You could vote to recommend it. But if it was within the bandstand, that's up to you.
I make a motion to recommend that the Burnham plaque be placed in the dugout.
Second. In which dugout?
The home.
The whole dugout.
Home team.
Okay, I'll second.
Good one.
So
Since all the teams are home
in
teams.
terms of contacting Park and Rec, who's gonna do that?
I can forward the slides
Okay.
and just, I'm in touch with Brad pretty regularly and just make sure on their next agenda that they include that.
Great.
I do think if you could vote on the submittal with Concom. I think that would be good to have a vote on record for that, so that when the time comes for filing, it's clear that it's the landowner that you've authorized that.
So we're voting to have you sign it, right?
That's what you've done in the past with the bridge and the Whetstone Greenway.
All right, so I move that we approve the RDA for work at the Quaker Cemetery and have the town manager sign on the select board's behalf.
I'll second, but do we want to, considering the discussion about funding and when to do that, do we want to wait until after we know if there's funding?
Well, I think I wouldn't actually submit it until it made sense to do.
Okay,
Kind of like the
okay.
Whetstone Greenway, you voted that.
Yeah.
It was another 6 months because it just
Yeah.
wasn't timely
Yeah,
yet.
okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, we won't submit it until the
Okay.
time is right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elisa.
Next item is a timeline for the soldiers and sailors procurement process. How do we want to discuss this? There's a lot of material here. Any thoughts? Either of you?
Well, I put in, obviously with the vote of town meeting, while the zoning wasn't explicitly to do with soldiers and sailors, it was driven by that intent, so we wanted to have this on for discussion, taking into account that vote. As you know from my prior opinion, I don't think that zoning vote was determinative in terms of whether the building could be used for office. It would rely on ZBA finding in order to apply, but I think that I don't want to get ahead of where you are. I think you might just want to revisit or confirm the direction. Is the intent to go forward with disposition? And if so, there are some specific questions we could talk about, like do you seek a ZBA finding prior to disposition so that you kind of secure that? But I know there's been talk about other policy approaches, for instance, mothballing the building and just letting time pass and buying time. So I don't know if there's any thought by the board in rethinking the direction, or if you want to continue with the direction that was set by the town meeting in the spring, in which case, there's tangible steps that need to be taken.
Could I
Or probably down at
Hang on just a second. So, I think we want to determine where, do we want to go, I was sort of under my own personal feeling is that we sort of, go ahead with the process and that we've outlined, even though it didn't pass, we still have the option of the ZBA ultimately giving us a variance and allowing it to go forward. Angus, I hadn't thought of having it done ahead of time without that leaves a lot of, in other words, someone that wants to create an office, say, and we don't know exactly what kind of office they would particularly want, or they might have some kind of specific need that would not be addressed by the ZBA if we did it ahead of time before they had some kind of a conceptual plan of what they wanted to do. So then they'd have to do it. Then they'd have to do it again a second time anyway. So I hadn't thought of doing it before we went to the process of disposition.
The thought was there'd be, let's say it went that way, there'd need to be site plan review once there was a specific proposal anyway. So the ZBA's finding is more based on the use so it would be a broadly defined, request for allowance of, say, professional office, and then once there was someone, if there was someone selected, it would still be incumbent on them to go through the site plan review process with planning board, which would deal with things like, lighting and signage. And I'm not suggesting that's a good idea. It's something you should think about.
Okay.
So in that case, it sounds like in that case, and I know you said you're not suggesting.
Well, it's just one less area for a prospective bidder to be concerned about.
Yeah.
If there's some level of entitlement already in place.
Yeah, okay, so in that case, the select board would be the sponsor of,
Yes.
of the request to the ZBA.
Yeah.
And if that was done before the disposition process began, we'd really need the historic preservation restriction on the building too, so that in order for somebody to consider a proposal, they'd have to know, what they were going to get out of it, what they were going to be able to do with the building, from a physical standpoint.
Okay, Rob, what did?
So,
You had a
if I
comment?
could just have a couple of seconds of your time?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of discussion's been had about administration, zoning, and related things like that. I think ultimately a building like that, it's almost an economic question first, and then things follow from the economic question. So Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Building is both historical and architecturally significant. It is a unique building. Much time and energy have gone into the question of what to do with this vacant building. I suggest that we reset the conversation. We need not be bound by previous discussions if we have learned things along the way or if circumstances have changed. As it relates to developer interest, I would say that economic conditions certainly make any project more difficult currently. I would ask the town to stabilize the building, preventing any further deterioration. Two things would be accomplished by attending to the roof, exterior walls, foundation, and any other building components subject to the elements and prone to deterioration. The first would be to gain a significant amount of time to have a suitable use present itself. A suitable use may come from an interested investor, or it may come about from opportunities presented by grants or other benefactors. But like for many preserved old buildings, patience is a virtue. The second reason for stabilization is that this additional investment provides value to any future investor, grantor, or benefactor. The amount of money used to stabilize becomes an investment in preserving the building and would certainly be welcomed by any future interested party. It might well be the last significant investment we make on Soldiers and Sailors before it is returned to use. But it would be money well spent when any other alternative action may result in the demise of this significant building. So what I'm remarking on is that it's an economic question first, and then a lot of other stuff follows, but that is mostly administrative, zoning, etc. I think you have to really consider it from a developer standpoint. When we did the master plan, one of their final words before they finished their report was, just remember that you as a town are developers. You have to think like developers. And so what I'm asking you to do is make sure the building doesn't degrade any further, put some additional money into it, they'll become more economically viable. Thank you.
So Rob, can I just clarify, are you suggesting doing that as a precursor to selling the building or as a precursor to holding on to the building for
If
town?
you have someone out there that wants to buy it as is right now, sure, go right ahead. My guess is that's under a set of circumstances where you may have to work parallel paths. So you may want to be gathering information about how to stop the deterioration of the building, continue any discussions you may have, but you have to be prepared for the fact that currently right now, even an interested party probably isn't going to go forward quickly. So that's what I'm thinking, we can't take our eye off of that ball. That building, the longer it's exposed to the elements, the less valuable it is, the more costly it is for development. This isn't the time to be setting them up for additional expenditures. That's what I'm trying to say. I know it's got a lot of moving parts, but we shouldn't take our eye off of that ball.
Angus, do you have a sense of how much administrative time would need to go into the whole procurement process?
I think we would need some, some expertise on what scope are we, seeking to be, like, what does it mean to mothball it? And that's something that could either be done by the vendor we have under contract or by someone who specializes in actually doing that work, but we need someone to help make sure that when we put out some kind of RFP to stabilize the building or mothball it, that we know exactly what we're asking for, so that it's a fair bidding process. So I don't see that as administrative time as much as some kind of professional knowledge.
I guess I was
Were you
speaking
talking
more
about
to-
the disposition
Yeah.
process?
So the
Oh, yeah.
disposition process is
Yeah.
going to be an enormous undertaking.
Yeah, so I guess
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
I think we need to keep that in mind if we potentially pursue this alternative. Why go through the whole disposition process if then we're going to decide to lock?
Well, I think part of what I heard Rob say is even if you are going to do that, I think you're saying it makes some investment, some level of investment is probably a good thing anyway because it's going to make it more attractive to, or it'll give prospective respondents to a disposition process more confidence that there's some value in the asset. And yeah, I mean, if let's say the direction was to go full speed ahead with procurement, between all that entails and a historic preservation restriction, we know the advice that we've been given in terms of Mass Historic and the time it takes them to respond to things, as well as the need, anyone who bid on it, there's going to be contingencies, presumably at least tying to use. So they're going to need to get it under agreement, then go through ZBA and maybe also planning board. I mean, it's a long road, even if it's like full speed ahead, it's still a long road before you've actually got the property transferred.
So the funds that were initially appropriated, some of them have been spent, but
Are you saying the original, like 2019?
Exactly,
Oh,
yeah.
that was closed out.
but
Yeah,
I didn't
Yeah.
finish my sentence.
Yeah, yeah.
But now they've been completely
That's right.
Yeah.
We voted on that.
But the article that was approved in May did have $28,000 attached to it. That was intended for the costs associated with both procurement and drafting and historic preservation restriction. So there is some budget if that's the direction, that you're going.
I think Lynn Spencer had estimated, and of course, who knows how accurate that estimate would be at this point in time, but at one point in one of her communications, she'd estimated something like $850,000 basically to put the building in a secure
That's not,
mothball.
no, that wasn't mothballing, that was
That
to
wasn't
restore the
mothballing.
exterior.
Okay.
I think
I,
it was.
I, Rick's point, though, Angus already mentioned it. You would want to go and get current dollars, but you'd also want to get it from someone who actually does that work.
Yeah.
An estimate.
No, I understand, that was her estimate, but I was just, give some
she
perspective.
doesn't do that type of work, does she?
No, but there's two different things. Mothballing would just be preserving so that no further damage happens. Her estimate, the $850,000, was to preserve.
Was it 200 or what was it?
For mothballing, it was 200.
200.
But the other option was to actually, do the historical preservation just on the exterior and leave the inside alone.
Yeah.
Right, the 850, which I remembered that number as well, that's like rebuilding the turret, among other things.
That's like an empty building. I mean, the walls are strong, the
Right.
roof is new and all that, and there's nothing inside. And then like 200 to mothball. Yeah. Or
Stabilize it, please.
Yeah, that word is coming from.
Angus, what is the,
Like that term, yeah.
what is the, it's sort of a minor issue, but what feedback did Maya give you about us having a building that's not really a sound building?
Well, they kicked it
Maya
off.
being our
Yeah.
insurance company.
Yeah,
okay.
they kicked it off insurance a couple of years ago, so we've been carrying a separate policy not through.
Right.
So just same with the rec building up on Page School. They will not insure a vacant building. So it's not really to do with them, it's to do with the other, I think it's like Lloyd's of London, I think is I'd have to check, but we get quotes every year, and I think it's Lloyd's of London.
That's very common on vacant buildings. It's very common now to go see
Yeah.
other carriers.
Yeah, and I'd have to check my budgeting to recall the cost. I
Like
believe it's
$4,000
it's I think
or
it's like
$5,000,
$4,600
something like
in
that.
that neighborhood. It's less than $5,000
Okay.
for the insurance. Yeah.
I would think that, the town probably was in favor of selling the building, and this whole procurement process, just has so many open items. I don't think you're gonna get a realistic buyer for the amount of time and effort that we're all gonna have to put into it. You're gonna get a buyer, he's not gonna bite unless he knows what the zoning situation is going to be. So we're in a situation where we're kind of headed down the procurement path, but there are too many open items. I don't think you're gonna get a realistic participant to actually buy the building. So now we're in a situation where, yet again, another year has gone by, and we keep throwing stuff at the wall. And I just think it's time to say, let's just secure the building. Everyone take a deep breath. Let the zoning board take a deep breath. Let the planning board take a deep breath. Save the building. That's what everyone in the town clearly wants to do, except for 3 people who want to tear it down. But the vast majority of people expressed a desire to save the building. And I think now it is at the point where we need to save the building. And figure out what we're going to do with it 5 years from now, 10 years from now. There are too many open items.
So it's not the time to do a project anyways, for anyone.
Right.
But look at 200,000. Let's just say it's 200,000. To preserve that building for decades is what you end up talking about when you mothball something. It's going to be a long time. You preserve the building, even if it remains vacant for 5 years or 10 years. We still have the building. If we continue the way we're going, you could find yourself without a building, whether you want to be without a building or not. That's the issue. If it degrades too much, ain't anybody going to be interested under any circumstances. 200,000 is not a lot of money to maintain a memorial building. It just really isn't. Archie, I know you're wondering about where in the cycle we're at. But if there was enough support for that building, which I believe there is, I think you have to set aside what the no votes were against. They might have been more against 2 million. And that's one thing, but they may not be against preserving the building so there's an eventual use. And all it costs us was this extra 200,000 and maybe some incidental stuff throughout the next decade or so.
Why, just to play devil's advocate though, why are we going to be any smarter 8 years from now than we are now?
Circumstances
Oh, I think
change.
everything changes.
Everything changes.
What do you mean?
Well, right now, as someone who's doing an addition on my house, having the builder say, I'm crazy for doing an addition. I mean, it's not realistic to take on projects right now. It just isn't. There's supply issues, there's health issues. The buildings in Lawrence, Archie, they didn't go away. You know how long they were vacant?
All those old
I mean, you
buildings.
just have to look around. This is the way it goes. This is a development issue. None of us are in the development game. But I can tell you that there are people who do this who would recommend stabilizing it because something will break further on down. Also, we have the ability have some opportunity to set some things in motion, but you don't have a lot of bandwidth to really push things forward.
Well, one thing I can guarantee you is whatever construction bid that we have now will be higher in 8 years from now.
Oh,
No one's,
The building will be gone.
Oh, whoa, speaking to that, no. You can't tell me that prices are gonna remain as high as they have been. That is not what happens in construction. There are times to do construction and a time not to do construction. Things do change, Archie, that's absolutely 100% for sure. Sometimes they're looking for work, sometimes they're not looking for work. To just presume that prices only go up is actually not what you would see if you went back through and started looking at manufactured spread.
but I'm just saying that all the problems that we have now, or that we had 5 years ago, what is the purpose of the building? Where is the parking? Where is the public access? The lot size is too small, and the septic situation. I'm not trying to be negative, but these are problems that will be exactly the same problems.
Depends on the use.
We don't know that. I mean, I
You-
think this was the
You've
problem.
had interested parties. It really depends on the use. It depends on what you do with that building, but if you're saying that you've reached a conclusion yourself that we're just gonna punt, put it out there, see if anybody's interested in, fine, just say that. But I don't think that's the direction that we wanna go as a town. I think we wanna secure the building.
If I have more of a question on where we are, you know, a year ago, I had a conversation with somebody, and I think a lot of people in this room have probably had a conversation with the same person about wanting to, you know, convert this property. As you outlined, it's a very unique and challenging property, and it really takes someone who has, you know, an expertise and a dedication. So even though we need to go through a public procurement process, you know, it's a limited field. And I guess I was under the impression that we were doing something with the zoning so that this party could move ahead with it, or give them, you know, some process of, like you said, pre-approval or whatever from the zoning board to move ahead with that route. And I guess what I'm concerned about now, you know, and you know, my fault for not necessarily understanding the implications of the town meeting, because, you know, we all should be better informed, but I'm hearing now, let's go back, you know, again, reset, and let's go back 3 years, I'm hearing, you know, to, should we stabilize it, 200 grand, where's that money come from, you know, et cetera, and we're just going on in a treadmill. Right, and I certainly want to preserve the building. I want to preserve the building. I have unfortunately given up on it as a municipal use, unfortunately. And I think that, you know, let's also not forget, we have to only spend cash right now. We can't borrow money on this, never mind getting it passed by the town meeting. But the moment we bond this, correct me if I'm wrong, we can't sell it to a third party. So we're in a bind that, you know, a lot of people want a perfect scenario. And COVID leaked that. Okay, and now we're down to different things. So my summary is, where is that conversation? I mean, is there still an interested party? I don't, you know, a year ago, there certainly was, and I considered that party a white knight. And you know, are we just talking theoretically, or, see, I thought we were talking about a real live buyer. And are we just still talking theoretical, or what?
The impression I have, Kevin, is that there might be somebody out there who's interested, but we can't talk with them, and we should talk with them.
I mean, I think what Rick is saying is a public disposition process.
Yeah, I understand that.
So that
Yeah.
is why,
Yeah.
the town can't presume a specific private party.
Sure.
It's a town asset.
Then
If
So that
if there is a party out there and we have a conversation with them,
I
we've
understand.
just destroyed the opportunity.
That's
I
right.
So-
1,000,000% understand
Okay.
public procurement
Okay.
and open
Okay,
meeting.
okay.
But I also understand that we can take quick action if we think that, I mean, it seems to me we're at a crossroads. That if we want to move towards a private disposition, all right, we need to get whatever pre-approvals and zoning board this and zoning board that to sign off and have a package and put it out to public, review. If you wanna, stabilize the building, if you wanna put in another 300,000 or 200,000 and then put it out for public, I mean, I guess that's a strategy. But where's this 200,000 coming from? It's gonna come in next fiscal year, as far as I can understand, and it's just another kick the can down the
And
wall.
it can't be CPA money, because then again, it would
Right,
not
right,
be
then we
sale.
want-
Well, I think it can be CPA.
No, then it wouldn't be saleable.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, it's
The
just,
reason being the historic preservation restriction. Is that the point you're making?
Well, you can't dispose of the
oh,
CPA.
You could.
could.
It's the borrowing. It's the Kevin.
The borrowing.
Yes, the borrowing that triggers the requirement for
Okay.
tax exempt
Yeah.
use.
Yeah.
The CPA would, I believe, trigger a requirement for a historic preservation restriction. Is that
But we
so?
would want that anyway.
Correct.
And we
Yeah.
spent CPA money on it already, so that probably kicks that in already.
Well, but we weren't planning on.
No, I actually was the first. Oh, that's right. It was
It was,
CPA.
yeah.
Was out of the
Yeah.
story.
It was, yeah, that's right. It's the borrowing that's
Right.
the issue, yeah.
So Angus, do you recall how much money we spent a few years ago to stabilize the building?
75,000.
I thought it wasn't
How
a
many
little
years
more
ago?
than 90. It was before my time.
No, they voted 95,000 at town
It's
meeting.
expensive.
We actually spent 75,000.
Okay.
And do you recall what was done?
Yeah, they
Is this
destroyed the building.
Yeah. It was bad workmanship.
Yeah, it's not hopeful.
They went in and on the second floor, they cut the wainscoting and the walls, all the hell, pardon my preservation, my language, but then they put in these great big archways and bolted everything through and bored holes in the floor, and I think they did more damage by what they did to preserve or stabilize the building if they left it alone, to be perfectly honest, in my opinion. But we spent a total of about $75,000 on it.
What if we, I apologize, what if we just put a public notice out right now, as is?
Nobody's gonna buy it.
No,
Well, but also any disposition under the town meeting vote would be contingent upon a historic preservation restriction.
Right.
So, we did make progress toward kind of guidelines that would be close to sufficient to do that, which ought to be sufficient for a prospective vendor to know what interest the town is looking to be protected. I think the issue is really what Rob's saying is what's the viability of that? Is there an expectation that there's more and more prospective vendors who who would bite at that?
You
And
will
that was
have more economic activity 5 years from now than you have currently. You may find yourself in a position where you're holding out because someone's expressed interest, who then, for whatever reason, financing or other, decides it isn't the right time for them to do it. And you will have a building that is still probably deteriorating. You may find yourself with less and less interest 4 or 5 years out. If you think projects are stopping because of cost in the future, that means that everything has to be built all at once, which isn't certainly the way that we build out. Projects go on, economic cycles exist. We're in a bad economic cycle right now. you had someone really interested, they're probably less interested. I would never hang my hat on one potential buyer who just sold a condo in North Carolina. Luckily, we had sold it 3 times because the first guy gets ostracized, so he has to withdraw, and the second person just that. Playing for just one buyer it's just not good. And I think we've been hanging our hat on an interested party. He may be very interested, but he may, for very good reason, decide it isn't the right time for him. That's all I'm saying. So I'm fearful that we're going to hang our hat on stuff, and we won't have done the first thing that I think we should do, which is secure the building. Because you could find yourself losing that building in a few short years.
Angus, what did we spend on the 2019 money? We spent $2,000, $3,000, 100,000, right?
No, it was over 100, and I have a specific accounting. I don't have it handy, but it was on the order of I think it was between 110 and 120. Most of that was the architectural engineering, including going through the site plan review, the Concom process, all the building plans, the bid documents, the construction specs. It was a fully bid. I mean,
So we didn't spend a thing on the building itself.
No.
All administrative.
No. Well, I mean, it's not administrative, it's professional
Yeah,
services.
yeah.
You can't bid out a building without doing that. So
yeah, that's
it's
not what
not-
she meant, but
Yeah,
it's not,
well,
it's
but
not
just-
physical. It didn't improve the roof.
Nothing stabilized.
I just think that, I just think
Nothing stable.
Didn't help the building.
So, I don't know, anything more you want from us? Because
I just think the conversation needs to be reset back to the beginning. And just stop with, okay, we'll let the Boy Scouts use it, and therefore I'm in favor because my son's a Boy Scout. Or we'll let the Girl Scouts sell cookies out of there, and I'm in favor of that. It just needs to, this whole, what are we gonna do with the building conversation just needs to stop. We just need to say, we need to stabilize the building, we'll figure it out down the road, when it will become clear. I just think voting based on what you particularly wanna do with the building has wasted 3 years of our time.
I do just want to say, I mean, there's a couple of references to waste of time, and these plans have value. And if the building is put out to bid, a private party benefits from having detailed, fully spec'd plans that are of more than $100,000 of value. So I just want to make that clear.
Yeah,
No, I think Ian might have been talking more about the amount of time and discussion we've had. And I think that there is the time for reset, put aside all the presumptions that maybe we've developed over the years, maybe forget whether we put some money into it or not. What do you do from this point forward? And I really think you gotta consider stabilizing the building first and foremost. Doesn't mean you stop everything else, doesn't mean you would turn away an interested buyer. But absent something concrete right in front of us, we could find ourselves continuing to discuss ZBA, planning board's amendments, plans, all this stuff, and the building's sitting there physically in some sort of jeopardy. It's at some level of peril. And you need to get someone in there to find out how much that is and react to it. Where you go from there probably comes about based upon what you find out. I don't know what, I mean, I know if it was 200,000, that we've done 200,000 before. Gee, we've done it out of free cash, I seem to recall. We sent 250 back. So let's not act like the money would be absolutely some sort of level of threshold that we just couldn't pass. I don't believe that for a second. I think this is one problem with the discussion that we have. We start getting all this peripheral stuff, half truths and vague things, and it's like, no, if you decide this is the course of action, there's a way to get it in place. You know it, I know it. There's tons of different ways to work this. We can do it if that's the will that we have. My sense from this town is that we don't want that building certainly agree. We shouldn't be sitting here discussing use as if use is going to determine saving the building. We don't know who's going to come forward. We don't know what they're going to want. You know, there are things that you can use that building for. There's a possibility that it could be, oh, I don't know, 3 units of housing. I don't know. That's not the point. Not knowing is just the way it is. But I do know the building.
A lot of people do not like that idea. Just
like which?
they people I've spoken with, the idea, well, let's just fix it up for the sake of fixing it up. With no use, it doesn't fly.
All these vacant brick buildings that eventually get used, you couldn't have predicted what the use was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They may not like it, it's the reality. I'm not talking about fixing it up. Who said fixing it up, Archie? I said you stabilize it for eventual future use. That use will be there.
I can't believe you
I
can
think
do it
it's
for.
important to distinguish between use of a developer and use of the town. I mean, what you're suggesting is stabilize it to sell it.
My most likely, right, I agree 100%. The most likely use is a developer is going to find it worthwhile doing. All I'm saying is that it's not going to probably happen this year. It might take several years. You'll have more economic activity 3 or 4 or 5 years out. And more importantly, you'll also have the opportunity to perhaps start seeking out who it might be and what they might do. I mean, there's lots of ways that people reuse buildings. That's why there are the tax credits. You also know that towns, I think, have been allowed to participate in tax forgiveness programs for a decade or so to get someone interested in the building. There's all this stuff that could happen, but it isn't going to happen this week or next year, possibly. Again, you'll have to work on all of this, several different streams all at once, but you're going to end up with a building falling down if you don't do something soon.
I'm not convinced that it makes sense to put a couple 100,000 or whatever the number would be to, you know, to do what we think is securing the building. I think we should start the process with the ZBA, start the process on a historic preservation restriction, and go through the disposition process. I mean, I heard what you said, Rob. I just don't happen to buy it.
Okay, I think I'm gonna cut off talking about it now. We've got, unfortunately, we have a lot of things to talk about tonight, but thank you for your comments. And this is it's not an easy, easily solvable problem. There's a lot of issues. I feel that I didn't want to be a selectman and be responsible for the building being torn down while I was a selectman. I didn't want that ever to happen. But having said that, there's so many things. There's a lot of problems with this, and maybe you're right, Rob. Maybe ultimately the solution will come out of the sky, but I haven't seen one yet. So I don't think we're not going to solve the problem tonight. Let's think about it a little more. I sort of feel that let's go ahead with what we tried. I don't think 6 months one way or the other is gonna make a difference. We're not going to be able to mothball the building for this winter right now. That's not happening.
there's no money. I mean, we
Yeah.
don't have funding for that at this point.
Stabilization won't happen until after the winter.
Right.
Right.
I mean, the irony, at some point, I've heard so many times that if we don't fix the building, it's going to crumble. And I don't doubt that the building's deteriorating, but 3 years ago or 4 years ago, somebody said explicitly, if you don't do it this winter, the building's toast. Well,
I think that was me.
It might have been me.
it's been 3 or 4 winters since then, and the building, it certainly isn't improving, but it's not toast. And so I guess I'm finding it harder and harder to accept arguments like that.
If I could just offer one factual thing. So it's correct that there's no funding appropriated right now for this. So if funding was to be appropriated, it would need to be by town meeting vote. The warrant typically closes right around the end of January, 1st of February. So if there was to be a proposal, whether initiated by the select board or a citizen petition or whatever, I just wanted to put that out there. That's basically, doesn't need to be all the details worked out, but there need to be a placeholder by around the end of January. So I know the CPC, and of course we've got the chair right here, has set a guideline that if there was to be a CPC proposal, that at least be floated by early January, so the committee can start talking about it in the month of January. There is some flexibility there, but I think the sooner things get on people's radar, the more time they have to deal with.
So aside from that, what would be the next step if we were going to proceed with the procurement process? It would be
Well, so the first, the memo from KP, which is in the packet, which is up on the town website, people want to review that, but it basically talks about the declaration of the property as surplus, which is kind of the formal start of the disposition process, and then determining the value, which you can either engage in appraisal or you can get the assessor's opinion. I think the latter would be more cost effective. Issuing the RFP, and so forth, and I think we would want to know that the historic preservation guidelines that were circulated over the summer. I know the Historic Commission had some comments on that I think were pretty targeted. I think we'd want to bring those draft guidelines back to this board as the issuing authority to say, are those, do you want to tweak those a little bit more to include an RFP? I think we're in the ballpark, but I think that's probably not a final draft.
So if we were to proceed down that road and we did all that and we put the property up for bid and nobody was interested, then what would happen? I mean, would all of that work be wasted, or would it be transferable to another round after work was done in the building, or?
If there was a subsequent to that, if there was some investment in the building and then the town followed the same process a year later, I think there'd be some efficiencies there because you'd have the templates all in place. I don't think it would be wasted time.
Okay. Thanks.
Good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Moving right along, we've gotten on to our third item of the evening out of 30 or whatever. The most recent info regarding signage for the Rocks Village Bridge. Rick, did you go out with Wayne?
I was Wayne out there, and I can't recall John's last name, but civil engineer with
John Gregg.
Who was it again?
Gregg. John Gregg.
John Gregg. Okay. Thanks. And we just kind of looked at the potential placement, and it actually would be quite a ways down from where that signpost is located right there. That's that's in front of the house effectively, or in front of the yard for the
Yeah,
house.
if
It would be about
right there where that red maple is, right?
yeah, actually, yeah. Well, and that is not actually a red maple. I actually went down because I looked at it when I
The
was there.
reddish maple.
Yeah. Well, it's an oak.
Oh.
It's not a maple. So
The
I
red
actually
tree.
I went back out to check today. It's like, no, that wasn't a maple. Come on, am I no,
Well, it was helpful that he said it was red.
it was
where
red.
the
Yeah.
head-
The keyword was red. It
No,
was red.
ahead. Where,
Huh?
where a head is written in the road.
Yeah,
that's where-
exactly. And there's a mark on the an arrow painted on the pavement now.
Okay.
That Wayne put there. That that's approximately where the sign would be located.
I think
Plus
that's
or
much
minus a
better.
couple of feet. Yeah.
So when I was looking before, there was a fire hydrant. So this is closer to the river from there.
Yeah, that's
The fire hydrant's up to the right.
yeah. I think
Yeah,
it's
okay.
ways up. Yeah. It's about if you were to go to the edge of the yard, that last house.
Yeah.
Before you get to River Road, and about a third of the way up to the intersection with River
Okay.
Road is where the sign would be located. And the thought was, with placement there, I mean, it's a good placement in terms of, warning and visibility. There'll probably have to be some trimming, just the branches over time to make sure the signs are blocked. But there's a big white pine. Well, you can see the big white pine above the red knot maple tree.
Yeah.
And between that white pine and the oak, even when the foliage is off the tree, there'll be some blockage, of potential viewing from the house above. But in fact, the house above, it's the back of the house, sort of a corner on the back of the house that is facing that way. So I don't think there'll be any visibility. Somebody would have to want to look.
Okay.
Well, I haven't been in the house, but I'm thinking somebody would almost have to want to look for the sign in order to see it.
Oh, plus you're looking at it straight on.
Right. Right. Yeah, and they would be looking at the yeah.
Okay.
So that's really just informational, no further action needed.
So I was surprised. So just so that the
Yeah.
public is aware that it said the lead time for manufacturing this sign is 9 months
Yeah. At least.
at least. Okay.
That's current lead times. Yeah.
Okay.
Apparently there's long lead times of material, and I asked him, is that supply constrained, supply chain constrained, or is that labor constrained? And he didn't know for sure, but he said it's probably a combination of both. Which doesn't totally make sense to me, because I would think if you ordered your materials, find it hard to believe that their labor lead time is out 9 months. Hopefully it's not all serial. But anyway.
Okay.
That's what he said, is that they're seeing lead times of 9 months at least for custom stuff like that now.
And what about
Well,
the
they'll
sign?
be able to fix the bridge again before they need another sign.
Who's paying for this bridge? I mean, this sign.
David,
Mass dot.
Okay.
What about the sign in front of the field? Is that also back ordered or?
Oh, this was in lieu of that.
Well, I thought there was a must turn left. It was going to be like one of the white signs.
Yeah, I think there will still be a.
The one in
that-
the field facing
Yeah.
as the road. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the one on Ferry Lane is there, but there's one on Bridge Street. I thought there was going to be one on Bridge Street as well.
I think you're right, but I don't think that's going to have that kind of lead time.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's not this is a custom signpost. That's why it's it's just a non-standard component.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll have to do borings or whatever. I don't know how long that takes.
Yeah. I guess it has a pretty good foundation. The foundation will be, I think his estimate was 4 to 5 feet in diameter. It's probably a big chunk of concrete.
Next item we've got is the grant that the town was received, that was awarded from the Commonwealth for the planning effort associated with the MBTA communities legislation. I see we've got our town planner on the line with us. Sue, I'm not sure if you were here to listen or if you wanted to participate, but Sue and I did meet last week to go over the grant, the fact that when we applied for the grant back in June, the parameters of the MBTA legislation were quite different than they are now. It's been scaled down quite a bit. When we applied for the grant, it was based on a kind of, Leah and I had roughed out what level of effort we thought would be needed for a planning effort associated with potentially 750 zoned units. That was where we got the budget that we applied for and that we have been awarded. My guess is, and Sue and I are in agreement on this, that the level of effort needed with the smaller scale of required zoning is probably less than half of the awarded funds. However, and so I didn't know tonight, did we want to talk about either accepting the grant at a reduced amount or potentially accept the grant at the full amount, do a procurement based on a scope that's more tailored to what we think we're going to need, but not explicitly relinquish those funds until we get down the road and see if in fact we don't need them. Because one of the things that Sue and I were talking through, which resonated with both of us as kind of planners, or myself a former planner, is it depends a lot on how the process goes. If you get to where the community has identified, let's say 2 or more specific locations that there may be, strong support to upzone for, for more this style of development. At that point, it might be worth expending some money for some conceptual design or even renderings as to what that might look like. I wouldn't be inclined to include that right out of the gate because I think that could end up being wasted time. If you go down the road with this and there's not the support to pursue it, I think I'm leery of having like nice gauzy renderings. But if you get to the point in the process and there does seem to be real interest in going forward with zoning amendments, definitely some conceptual planning and even renderings can be helpful to that consensus building process. So I think my recommendation would be that we do accept a grant at the full amount, but that when we send, but we got to confirm with the state we can do this, because I don't want to be forced to go out with a $75,000 work scope. I think we could probably get what we need for $30,000, and I think that's a conservative number. So I guess I wanted to put that on the table tonight and get the board's thoughts as do we accept the grant at all, and if so, do we accept the whole amount, or what if the state says that if we accepted the full amount, they're going to expect us to scope it for I just think $75,000 is way too much money for the MBTA community's planning process as it has changed since June. Back in June, I think that was a very reasonable, if not short budget. But when you're talking about, I think it's 82 or 87 units compared to 750, that's obviously an order of magnitude. So
was this on the planning board's agenda last week? I mean, we had that other meeting, so I don't know.
Sue, are you with us?
I am, yes.
Did you
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Did you hear the question? Was this something the planning board talked about last week?
It was in the planner's report. They didn't give it a lot of time, just kind of updated them on the process and schedule. But they did not discuss whether, the scope of the project in general or the acceptance of the grant.
Okay.
Well, Angus, this grant is sort of a fact-finding mission at the same time. It doesn't necessarily, what if the finding of the analysis and research of the topography and the everything of potential sites comes up that this doesn't look like it will fly, but you have to, or it does look like it, but you have to do the work to find that out.
Yes.
But so why are you're saying that it would be a waste of time to even investigate that if you didn't go forward?
No, I'm saying certain types of work that would be part of a $75,000 planning effort, I think would be premature until there's some sense of whether the community is really serious about going forward with this policy or not. Because what I'm leery of is, if you sign a contract with a planning firm for $75,000, you've got to get it done in a certain amount of time. We at a staff level are going to need to clear off some other, there's going to need to be so many meetings to use that much budget over that period of time that, and I'm leery a little bit, having worked with DHD over many years, of, they have a lot of pre-qualified consultants that you can just hire without going through a procurement process, which is very helpful from a time standpoint, but I don't want to be, and I don't think this board wants to be in a position of pushing this. We want to make people aware of the mandate, make people aware of the decision the town has to make, and help have an informative planning process so people can make an informed decision as to whether they recommend it or not. There's pros and cons.
Right, but can't we? But
there's certain things like physical planning for specific locations or like renderings, which in my experience with a $75,000 budget, that's part of what you're getting when you're spending that kind of money, I think would be really premature until you get to a certain point. Maybe you include that in the scope, but you don't actually okay the work until the town's gotten to a certain point. I'd much rather spend.
No, but no one says you have to spend all the money.
No, but if you enter a contract, if you're not clear with the vendor that certain things you may or may not go forward with, depending on how the initial investigation goes. If their expectation is they've got a $75,000 contract, that's another dynamic. You're dealing with a vendor that's now coming in with a big team and all these subcontractors, and then you hire them and say, well, hey, we're not so sure we want to do that until we know is it because of infrastructure issues or soils issues or Title V issues, maybe, or community support issues, it's just not going to go. I don't want to be spending, 5 figures of public money, state money, for marketing, or like renderings. To me, it just, at that point, it feels like we're pushing something that there's not necessarily going to be support for. With 750 units, that was a whole, I think we would have needed every penny. But I just think it's a different.
Yeah, but you're assuming that there's a stepwise process and with a determined outcome, and we don't know what the outcome is. We need to get it. We need information. We don't have any information.
Well, so let's talk a little about that. And maybe I should have started with this with the action plan and the January 31st deadline to have an action plan. That was another thing that Sue and I discussed when we met last week. I came out of that meeting with a greater confidence that we can hit that timeline based on in-house effort and bring something to this board to review in January, which need not be overly committal on specific locations. That's what I've been concerned about all along, is prematurely bringing out locations, which could end up being really counterproductive because you could end up, triggering a lot of opposition in specific locations when you haven't had the time to do a bona fide process. But after meeting with Sue, I think we do think an action plan can be prepared that need not get that specific specific on locations. And that will basically set out the, the framework for the deeper dive planning effort that would then happen over the subsequent roughly, 17 months or so.
And is that, so, okay, that's
So
interesting.
from
So
like like roughly January to the following June, like a year and a half.
okay,
And
so
that's
I
what the
was,
grant would be for.
Yes, that's what the grant would cover.
yeah, I guess, yeah, I was trying to envision how the 75,000 was gonna be spent.
In 2 months.
Yeah, right, yeah. I was like,
So that would be the whole process, the 75 grand.
Yeah.
But back to your point about like the planning, the planning consultant, it is a multi-step thing.
Mhm.
So theoretically, the work is going to get done incrementally based on
That's
these
right.
different deadlines.
Yep.
A couple of different contracts. I mean, expectation of a $30,000 thing by this date, and Archie's point. You got to slot. You might use it, you might not.
Mhm.
And I would think that. Never mind the state.
Right.
And this is 100%. This is not.
No, that's the other thing I mentioned earlier with regard to the money is, there's a $7,500 local match, so it's a $67,500 grant for a $75,000 scope. So we did not appropriate $7,500, so I've had my eye on the select board professional technical services, which would not totally wipe out that account, but it would draw it down heavily in between that and the Cortland Lane stuff.
yeah, how much, I don't recall how much we have.
10,000 was where we started the year, and
But is that feasible? Like I was just saying. I mean, mini
Yeah,
contracts.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, the scope. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, scope would, and it would have to, for the state requirements, it would have to break down which share of the budget is going toward which aspect of the planning process, and some of that would be sequential. You're not going to start writing zoning, for instance, until you have some sense that there's an interest in actually proposing zoning, and before you get to there's some kind of physical planning and infrastructure analysis that would need to happen. Although I think the infrastructure, other than the septic, is probably a lesser issue with the changes that the state made to the policy.
And if there was an excess, let's say 60,000 spent, a lot of times you can have, revisions obviously with the state that you could find a mini scope that wasn't, they could let you do more work on it. So that's going with that. Or not. But all
Maybe. Yeah, I
private
mean, yeah, this.
It's not too flexible, but there's a little bit if you
Yeah,
want.
the HCD hasn't. I don't know.
Different agencies.
Maybe.
So when do we have to respond?
Well, they haven't given a deadline, but I can tell you, I'm getting a couple of emails a week of like, "Have you signed yet? Why are you signed?" Like, and normally you get a grant. So I don't. They haven't specified a deadline, but I think that if we don't make a decision tonight, I would want to make a decision at the next meeting as to do.
Yeah, I would like to get planning board input on,
Yep.
if they think we should go ahead with this or not.
That's because if we're going to undertake this, it's got to be as a community,
Right.
not this board. We're going to need, and I know Sue. Sue, do you want to just? I know you haven't been on the job too long, but do you have a sense of like work plan and bandwidth issues and how committed or not the planning board is to this?
Yes, so having had a few conversations with different members of the board, I think that they are anxious to address it and to move forward with it. We haven't really talked about how much of my planning time that should take up, but I think there's adequate time, and I think there's adequate interest without speaking for them. Happy to put it on the agenda for their next meeting and have them have that discussion and flesh that out.
Great. Yeah, and that aligns well
But
with.
it has been a priority as I've spoken to various members of the board to ask them their personal priorities moving forward. It has risen to the top for a number of them.
Great. And you had said to me, and I want to make sure that the board gets this point because I haven't shared this with them, but you're aware of with the MBTA communities and the link to MassWorks and some other grants. But there's something else I hadn't known about that Sue made me aware of to do with if you do not comply with the MBTA communities, that can affect the amount of state funding that our local housing authority gets. Is that right, Sue?
Yeah. It is. I did confirm with the local housing authority.
We lost you a little bit. Can you start again? You broke up a bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep, go ahead.
So I did confirm with the HCD that a certain percent of local housing authority funding comes from the capital projects fund, which is one of the funds that is restricted. So they thought they agreed that I had read somewhere that it was 10%, so it could be a reduction of that, of up to 10%. That was my understanding.
Of their total funding or just one of the capital?
Oh, just a capital.
So I don't know how many pots the local housing fund, housing authority draws from at that level.
Mm-hmm.
But they said they said that 10% seemed about right of the money that they receive would be from that capital project. So I'm guessing it's 10% of their funding.
Okay.
Which they could lose if they did not move forward.
I think they get a
Or
I think they get a capital appropriation and an operating appropriation each year separately.
Okay.
And
So it might be good to know how much.
putting in meeting the compliance with the action plan in January, at the end of January, does put the town in compliance until the end of 2025.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to hear what the planning board has to say too, but I mean, I'm kind of inclined to think that we should take the whole amount and.
I think we should. Now,
but try to parse it out.
Yeah.
You know, so I hear what you're saying about, you know, having a planning firm, you know, consulting firm, you know, be built up for a $75,000 project,
right.
and then you pull the rug out from underneath them.
Right.
We don't want to do that. But if it was possible to break it into a couple or even maybe three, I don't know.
That's what I would like to do.
Yeah.
And so Sue had put together kind of a bullet points of like an initial scope based on some of what she's hearing from that Mass Housing Partnership Technical Assistance Program of identifying potential district boundaries, developing and or evaluating proposed use and intensity requirements, estimating unit capacity and gross density using DHCD's compliance model, and then drafting the zoning amendments. I would recommend we go forward incrementally, and the only concern it would be if DHCD isn't going to raise eyebrows if we send a solicitation, because even though you don't have to bid, you still need a scope, and so you would, I think, even though these firms are pre-qualified, I think we'd send it to 3 firms and get quotes. Is it going to raise eyebrows with the state if that's for, let's say, a $30,000 scope or a $35,000 scope and not a $75,000 scope? And we say, oh yeah, we want to hold this back. I'd be comfortable with that, but if the state's going to say, you know, like give us a hard time that we're not entering a $75,000 contract, I just feel like that's taking on a commitment when you look at billable rates and things. You know, $75,000 contract, even over a year and a half, to use that money responsibly, you're talking about a lot of meetings, a big investment, and I think with all of the things that are on our work program, I'd be hesitant to sign a contract to go through an 18-month process if we get 4 or 5 months down the road and it's clear this thing's dead on arrival, which may not be the case, I hope it's not the case. I think Sue thinks, and this is a great opportunity for this community to look at the built environment and what type of densities can be great communities, and it's, density's not a 4-letter word, and some of the things we've talked about with the housing trust. I think it's a great opportunity to do a real planning effort. But if we get a certain way down the road and it just looks like the community as a whole is not open to this, we got a lot of other work to do than to be pushing something that's maybe dead on arrival.
So can we get any feedback from them about whether it's acceptable to have
Yeah.
kind of a multi-phase approach?
Yeah, I was hoping that this webinar that we were at a couple of weeks ago would be more interactive. It was not. It was a total dud, in my opinion. So yeah, we can definitely find out if that's an acceptable approach. Because if it's not, then my recommendation would be to like scope it at more like 30 grand or 35,000.
So you're going to the celebration event?
No. No. Not going to Lennox.
I wasn't aware of a celebration event.
It's in the packet.
Yeah, you're invited. It's in Lennox day after tomorrow. If you want to make the trip, just say the word. We'll
Be right there.
Yeah. So I do think it's a good opportunity, but to justify the effort, it's got to be a joint effort.
Yep.
All right. Is that it on that?
Yep.
So I don't have any immediate plans to sign the contract with the state. But if I start to be up against the deadline, then I'll let you know. Next item is to discuss, what priorities you'd like communicated to the planning board when they meet in a couple of weeks on the 15th. Actually, next week, just next week.
So the grant?
Yes.
So what is the origin of this item? Is this an annual thing that?
I think it's something we've been working toward for the whole time I've been here, of trying to get some alignment between the select board's priorities and the planning board's priorities. And I think part of it is to, I think we'd be having this conversation this time of year anyway, but with the new town planner and wanting to give that position clear policy direction on priorities, it's going to go a lot better if there's at least largely overlap, if not entirely. But that, we don't have a set that's totally independent of whatever she's hearing from the planning board. And I know from working with the planning board and the chair, they would very much like to have alignment as well. So I think we're just trying to improve communication and be clear in what our objectives are. And I know, for instance, I've talked to Sue a bit, talked to Ann and the planning board as a whole, I believe, about ground-mounted solar and the concerns that this board has raised, and frankly I have as well, regarding the existing bylaw. So that I would think would be one. But yeah, we wanted to just try to improve communication between the two boards.
Yeah, well, I guess I'd like at some point for them to look back at the cell phone, the cellular communications tower bylaw, and just give that some fresh thought.
Something up here. It's Archie, did you have thoughts for the planning board?
No.
So, we've got the housing production plan update, which we're already committed to. So I think they would be part of that.
Another thing I know they're working on is the accessory dwelling unit. I'm really in favor of that. I don't know how you guys feel about that. trying to create some incentive, from the planning board, to creating, affordable housing by having it on, existing lots.
But they won't count as affordable.
Right.
Right.
But they will be affordable.
They will be affordable.
They'll be more affordable.
They'll be
and-
modestly
and-
priced.
And they will be rental, and they'll be available to people.
Yeah.
But they won't necessarily meet the state's affordable criteria. We need a tiny house bylaw.
Yeah. Anything
I
else?
have to think about that one because I think of what Newburyport has done with overfill of their residential areas, that they've allowed a lot of kind of creating 4 units out of a 1 unit place, and have a lot of people are unhappy with what's happened in the city of Newburyport for that reason. Neighborhoods have become more crowded. I mean, we're not the same kind of zoning is different, and land use and stuff, but I have to think about that.
I think it's in devil's in the details, right? So whatever kind of bylaw or however they're going to manage it, I mean, that would be, where we'd have to really pay attention to that.
Yeah, because developers have really been able, and there's been things where people have actually had to have stuff torn down and stuff like that.
Right.
That people have infilled older properties and even messed up in the things in the historic district and stuff like that. It just, I agree. I'm just, again, playing devil's advocate. Sometimes you can go overboard on that.
I know another thing they're working on is a steep slope bylaw. After some of the issues we've had recently with developments.
I would just suggest, I think this is the direction they're going, but I'll just say, since Sue was listening, not that it's up to me, but I think that's a great thing to add as performance standards or defining developable area or something within existing bylaw. I would hate to think that's a new bylaw, just from a kind of regulatory duplication standpoint. And I believe that's the intent, is to make sure that there's clear standards in the existing bylaws with regard to steep slopes and erosion and so forth, not like a separate bylaw.
Yeah, so this was a couple of months ago,
Right.
meeting I sat in on, so maybe it's evolved since then.
Well, when I heard about it, I talked to Leah, because as you know, we're going through a lot of gymnastics right now with the stormwater bylaw and regs to make sure they're internally consistent with all the other bylaws. I just worry about some other special permit, and now a single project has to get how many permits just from the planning board, never mind Concom. It's just, there's a diminishing returns. That's different than having like clear performance standards in your current bylaw, in your site plan review bylaw, that apply to anything, as opposed to some separate bylaw just for slopes. That's a slippery slope.
You've been waiting to use that.
So I just pulled up, and I'll do a screen share. This has been part of a couple of packets now. But in terms of this is the list we talked about.
The thing I have brought up to you, Angus, and this would be planning board. We don't have anything about pot.
Correct, and we did talk about that. And Sue asked me some questions I didn't know the answer to, because it's not something I've really dug into here. By my understanding, and Sue, I don't know if you want to jump in here, but is that I believe West Newbury voted
They
favorably
did vote in
for it,
favor.
so you do need
So
to
we're
allow-
vulnerable.
Correct. So just like an adult entertainment type thing, where you have to allow it, otherwise it's de facto allowed. reason to affirmatively allow it somewhere. Is that right, Sue?
Yes, that is right. If the community voted for it, then it needs to put regulations in, to protect itself and to put it in areas where you think it's appropriate and put the performance standards around it that you feel are important. There are already some that are de facto exist, distance in schools, et cetera, but those are all the types of things you would want in your bylaw.
So up on the screen, this is the list we brainstormed a while back. I'm not hearing anything that's not reflected here. When and in what order, those are things that are going to fluctuate based on, any low-hanging fruit or any, but I feel like this is a pretty good list.
Yeah, one we didn't talk about is the updated master plan.
Yeah.
That's a big.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I've kind of been not touching that topic because it's we've got so many other things going on and it's something that needs to be done, but I didn't want to cause anything to blow up by throwing one more big project on.
I think if a housing production plan is done well, it can be a good foundation to build on.
Yeah.
I don't like J.
I know.
Why?
But it'll affect our time, whether we initiate it or not. So another thing, so I've had a couple of meetings with Sue in her first couple of weeks just to kind of brief her on different issues, and there are definitely a couple of things we're working on or will be working on that I think are planning issues that historically the planning board and the town planner really haven't been involved with, but I think at the minimum I want them aware of. One of those obviously is soldiers and sailors and just keeping their ear to the ground on what's going on there and why, and not just the zoning issues, but the bigger picture. And the other, there's just two, but another big one is the River Road, resiliency planning. And if we get that MVP grant, I would think that's something we would want the planning board and the planning staff, I don't know how directly involved they'd be, but we want them aware because there's, it's a big deal. Obviously the Affordable Housing Trust and the action plan for the trust. So I think there is a lot, and it's, with a position that's zoned for part-time hours, we just need to be really strategic and hopefully with the planning board and this board, have some cohesive direction that she's able to kind of know what the short list is, prioritize the efforts to get those things done and move on, and eventually we will get to everything, but to not try to do everything all at once, because then you just won't get as much done.
So I don't recall, had we agreed, are we going to meet as a board with the planning board or?
Not necessarily, you're welcome to, and if I think there's a majority gonna be there, I would post it.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna be there.
Yeah.
I assumed one or more of you would attend.
Yeah.
And so I think if we're gonna have two or more, I think I would post it just so you could have an open.
They're meeting virtually still, right?
Yeah.
Last I heard, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's next Tuesday.
I think that list covers it.
Good. Okay, great. All right, Sue, was that helpful? Did you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, and it was very helpful.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sue.
Thank you. Item F. At this point, I think this is the administrative approval to submit the grant. The scope is what we had envisioned. The one potential expansion, which I don't think is material, but I'll let you know just because we had a call with TEC today. We had a Zoom meeting this morning, and they think, based on prior Safe Routes to Schools grant rounds, that the state sidewalks that terminate somewhere. And so they were noting that the conceptual plan from June went a certain distance into Pipestave and then just kind of stopped. And so they wondered, like, why did it just stop? And so we talked it through, and they thought it would be a stronger application if that was extended a bit further south. I made them aware of and I'm trying to pull up the plan here so I can show you. I made them aware of the conservation.
South is into the parking lot.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I made them aware of the conservation restriction and the prohibition on paved area, but I showed them the map of the municipal use area, which is carved out of the CR, and I don't have that map handy. Actually, I do. But it seems like you could go a certain distance while remaining within the municipal use area, and they thought it would be, this isn't the one I'm looking for. They thought it would be stronger to show that the pedestrians are brought somewhere and not just like.
So even being brought to the playing fields was okay?
Yeah, what
Probably can't go quite that far, can you?
No, you can't go as far
Probably
as
just
that.
up to the farthest down to the recycling area, maybe?
Basically, yeah, you could go just to the south of, you could cross that.
The state can spend $1 million so that people can leave their recycling in the dumpsters.
All right, so I'll do a screen share for anyone watching from home. But this is the so-called municipal use area within the conservation restriction. So right now it shows a kind of a sidewalk on this side, kind of going, I don't know, roughly around this far. And they thought that if it went all the way even to like here, that would be much more attractive. They had originally suggested could it go all the way to here, but I said that once you get off here, it gets messy. And they agreed. Once they learned about the CR and Greenbelt, they said, let's try to avoid that. I said, agreed.
What about the other side of is the other side of the driveway
so they
Greenbelt or no?
It's no. You mean the other side up here?
Just the other side, just the DPW side of the driveway is you say it stopped there, but you could go a lot further if you went on the side where the horse ring is all I'm saying.
No, it's actually a little shorter. It's about the same, but you can see up on the screen.
Is that heavy dotted dashed line?
That's the
CR?
municipal. That's the municipal use area.
Oh,
so
yeah,
it's part of the CR, but it's not subject to the same restrictions as everything else.
Yeah.
So that's why you can get up to the corner past the recycling area.
Correct. That was their thought. So they're gonna put together a specific plan showing that, and I'll send that around once I have it. But
so the sidewalk down the hill was the equivalent of Alaska's Bridge to Nowhere.
no, that is going to be part of it.
Yeah.
So what changed? I mean, I thought originally they were saying no, or is it just the new project manager?
I think they needed to gain some comfort with it. I think the new project manager had I think his initial thought was, whoa, that's going to be a big, and I said, yeah, it is. And I asked him specifically if we include it. I talked about the board's rationale of, this isn't a grant we're going to get every few years. If we get it, we probably won't get it for another 15 or 20 years. So we might as well try to get the maximum. And that totally made sense to him. And I said, if in their experience, do they think that if we apply for that bigger thing, is the state more likely to say, well, we can't approve the whole thing, but we can do the core of it? Or are they going to just say, no, it's just too big, we're not going to approve it at all? And they said there is, in their experience, a dialogue and a give and take. So if the state is like, that's just a little too ambitious, they don't see that it's self-defeating to include that scope. And in fact, the more they learned about it, and it was myself and Christine Wallace on the Zoom, we talked for almost an hour this morning, and once they learned about the town's longer term objective of connecting to the sidewalk sidewalks to the west at the training field, and that we've, consistently put in comments through the tip process.
And we've been doing that for years.
For years.
Yeah.
That helps them build a narrative that this is really incrementally advancing a longer term objective, which the state will share. They did say, and this came up, I think, in the initial response, that where this is on a state road, in their experience, the state would, their initial expectation would be a shared use path, which is a 10-foot path with, I believe, a 4-foot shoulder, which, with the grading implications and the trees that would need to be cut, is probably not going to work in that location. And so they said that some design variances would need to be requested from the Safe Routes to Schools people at DOT. But they felt in general that getting that idea on the state's radar in a more serious way was going to be a positive.
Well, the other thing is, think about it this way, Angus. If we say get it, we get the sidewalk, or at least the idea of it down the hill, and then it's like you've got two ends that it would be much easier to get that third piece in the future. Well, look, this is going to be great. We have this part and this part, and we'll finally be able to, kids
Right.
can walk to the school.
Right.
And so even though initially it doesn't get all the way to the training field, we've done the hard work, the hardest work,
Right.
where the slope is the worst, to and future funding from some source might be easier in the future.
Right.
Does the CR go down, does the CR go to the left of, or to the west, I mean, of the, which is the left in the view we had, to the west of the DPW area? Does it extend down past that? I haven't voiced this before, but I have some concern about putting a sidewalk with people anticipating that people are going to ride up and or down a sidewalk on one side of the street on what is a moderate hill that's relatively long. I ride that hill on occasion when I ride 113, but many people really don't ride that hill because it's a long, moderately steep hill. And if it was, I think somebody had suggested possibly the path instead being routed over into the, off the highway. That might be more practical if it could be done. But it looks like from that view that it's all controlled by the CR, so that maybe gets really messy.
But you can do, the CR and an accessible path are not mutually exclusive. It's just it would require, a lot of approvals for any clearing or really anything.
And was the idea of going through the solar field eliminated?
You mean?
A sidewalk on, through there rather than on 113? I mean, we had talked about it on and off.
So it's funny you should ask, because they asked me that specific question of whether that had been considered, and I said it had been raised during the process as kind of an acknowledgement that there's like an informal path, or not formal path, but that some number of people do walk up through the solar array to get up to school, but that hadn't been fleshed out, and that it's not shown anywhere as an official town path. And I do think that if we get the grant, there's, they don't just go right to like engineering, they do some additional conceptual planning. So I do think there'd be ability to, refine the specific idea before they get to the higher level of engineering. But I can ask them, we talked about that, there are some concerns just with the grading there.
Yeah.
Like if you put in a path and it's gotta meet all the accessibility requirements and the switchbacks you need to meet the grades, is that really, but that's gonna be a challenge in this entire site.
Right.
Well, the grade is the same on either side.
Well, but to
So
go
you
like
don't have the
up
road.
the hill here,
Yeah.
I think I'd like to go off road here.
That's good hill. I've ridden that hill. It's good hill to ride, and particularly in the grass.
Be nice to ride down.
Well, that was when I referred to the shared use path, where you have people going up, but you also potentially have people coming down the hill, and some people are going to go fast on a.
See, that's what I was more concerned
And
about.
I-
I was more concerned about them going down the hill than up.
Yeah. So there's a good push up a hill issue, and then there's a fast trip down the hill, which maybe creates a safety issue if there is other traffic.
Pedestrians.
Yeah. Pedestrians, or even other bikers coming up with people on.
Okay, so there'll be time for the
Yeah.
more design questions.
Yep. Yeah, and so I would look for a vote from the board to authorize submittal of the grant application, and also to sign a letter of support. We haven't drafted a letter of support, but we'll be working on that. It's due on the 18th. It's due a week from Friday. So between now and next Friday, this is a huge push. And thankfully, Christine's here to help push it. But we got a lot of work to do.
So there's already a drafted letter of support that's going to be sent to other or made available for other people.
That's what we're working on. Yeah. We have a couple of sample templates that they gave us. We just got them today. So Christine's going to be working to customize those and send them.
So
right
like
us.
the district and
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
do we need a motion now then to
So
authorize submittal of the grant
Yep,
application?
yep.
Yeah, right, that was a motion.
Second.
Great.
all those in favor? Aye.
Thank you. Once I have.
Who else should we? So we want the paid school, the district. Who else do we want signing off?
So
on this?
they
How
told
about
us.
how about the
Parks
paid
and Rec?
school
How about-
PTO?
How
Oh,
about-
that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't included that.
Maybe the youth sports teams.
We.
The equestrian, West Newbury equestrian.
Yeah, running and driving.
Yeah,
Riding, driving,
so here's the
yeah.
list I had sent to Christine. Mill Pond Committee, Open Space Committee, Riding Driving Club, Park and Rec Commission, Planning Board, Town Planner, State Rep, State Senator, Dick Cushing, Pentucket Principal, Pentucket Superintendent, Select Board, and Police Chief. And then I think adding to that, PTO is great. Any others?
I think youth sports, because I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of that is for
Yeah.
safety.
Yeah,
I'm not sure who you would reach out to, but
yeah.
maybe Park and Rec.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, that's good. But they said that at a minimum, it's going to need to have, police chief talking about the safety aspects and chief elected board, the school administration. A strong letter there will be really helpful. They basically said anything above that is gravy, but I told them that we're going to do a Facebook post and a town news and announcement post, and it wouldn't surprise me if we had 30 emails that come in just from residents with support for this idea. So, but we want to do something with a nice graphic that catches people's attention. We'll just take something out of the safety audit from June, but we'll do that.
Is there any kind of a bicycle group that formal we know of? I don't. I'm just
No, I don't know. I don't think it was.
We have the Eco Angels from the
Right.
invasive zone. Alright, so do we need to do anything else?
No.
Letter? Okay.
No. Once I have a draft, or actually, Christine's, you should be hearing from her on that when she's got, which probably will be tomorrow. That she'll be getting those drafts around to people.
Okay, item G, discussion of potential, revisions to the Pentucket Regional Agreement, and a recap of the State of the School District meeting that was held on November 1st. Probably the biggest take-home message that we heard from the superintendent was that there's a quite a large cost of living increase that is unchangeable, dictated by the Commonwealth for the tuition and other expenses for out-of-district special education, and that would be on the order of 14%, I think they said, and that would be correct me if I'm wrong, that would be an increase with no additional, at least at the moment, no additional reimbursement of approximately 500,000. Wasn't that the number they used, something like that?
Yeah, I don't remember what that was.
525.
But I was a little confused as I read through this. There was a lot of material, but as I read through it, at one point it sounded as though there was actually a proposal and didn't have all the approvals that it.
No, this is happening.
That's what Justin said, but then I probably won't find this
because they have they showed the
Page 100 is the.
Yeah, I'm on page 100,
previous years' cost of livings, and this was just, so this does happen. It's just that instead of it being 2%, it's 14% this year.
Well, it says, is the estimate final or just preliminary? And the answer is this is unclear.
Well,
Yeah, that's what I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if this QA, the FAQ thing, was prepared, by some education agency, or I can't really read the logo.
Yeah, it's not clear yet. So what's
What is this?
it's the OSD's October 1st estimate, final or just preliminary? Yeah.
Yeah, because the caveat was that it should incorporate cost containment and be fair to both government units and providers. So.
Right.
This FAQ was just sent to us on Friday. It's dated October 25th.
It did say that for some reason in F1, another sort of fact that I got out of reading this, that the special education circuit breaker that is funds from the Commonwealth to cover special education costs in districts was going to be beefed up, but not in FY24. For some reason, it was going to be beefed up going forward in FY25. I don't know why there's like a year where their expenses are going up, but they're not addressing that. But for some reason, that's what it's said at the moment. But
I guess bottom line is, bottom line I got out of the presentation is that if we thought that the district was going to be economically challenged before, it's a lot worse now.
that's correct, yeah. And this would sort of, that just this alone, this cost would probably encompass 2.5%, sort of like the usual, the usual Prop 2.5 increase that the towns can accommodate without an override, and this particular item, unless something changes in the interim, would eat up that whole amount. If you think of it, because it makes sense, if the school budget is somewhere in the 30 million, then 2.5% of that would be approximately 500,000, I believe.
Yeah, 1% would be 300,000.
Yeah.
Would be 750,000.
It's close. Yeah.
In terms of the format, I've heard mixed reviews in terms of whether people found it was effective. I do know the administration made a real effort to put that together, and it was intending to be responsive to some of the feedback they got from that meeting in August that you and I attended, and some of the more recent discussions about the spirit of it. They were trying to do was to get the 3 town select boards together. I thought it was going to be more of an interactive discussion. I appreciate the effort they made and the spirit of it, but I just would, and I would like, and I think they would like some feedback. Was it helpful? Was something different that you would envision? Because I think the basic idea was to get 3 towns together in one place, before the February, March, whenever it's in budget. Like,
I could have used a few more besides this one item, though, which they talked about a lot. A lot of other things were not addressed. Like, okay, what about the what about the maintenance budget? What about the energy budget? I mean, what do they think? Do they have how have their healthcare costs been going over the, over trending over 5 years? I'd like to. They only focused on that one item.
Actually, I think they have. I thought that there was actually a number mentioned for healthcare.
Was it? Okay.
I thought.
But again, I'd like to see the trend on some of those kind of things, just to see what was going on. Will we save money on energy costs with the new building? I mean, just what do they think about stuff? I had a lot of questions that they have to be thinking about it. To me, it was useful to see the metrics that they were comparing their peers, so-called peer schools with Pentucket. I don't know how good I don't know much about those measurements, so I don't know whether they're good, whether they're good analysis of the district's performance or not. I don't know. Did you guys have any feel about that, or it doesn't really matter?
I do wish that it was more interactive. I just felt like we were being talked at and didn't really have.
I also had I don't know if you did. Yeah. I had a hard time hearing the reverb from the.
It's funny.
I could not
sure
hear
that for the
all
audience
of
in that auditorium, that the acoustics are going to be good. But if you're sitting in the back of the stage, the acoustics were difficult.
How was it for you?
Okay, so it wasn't just me.
No, it was not. Yeah, and at the time it was fine. It was fine in the audience.
But you were in the
Right,
audience. Was
but
it good?
Afterwards, Justin said, I don't know if it was that night or the next, but he said that they learned that people who were furthest back on the stage couldn't hear anything.
Yeah,
So-
it was really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
we were
struggling.
about as far back
And
as you
so was
could
Rick.
go.
on the
Yeah,
other
You
side.
were
I was just the other side.
Okay,
same
so
position
I
as
had,
mine.
I would say I got about half of what he said. I really did.
Yeah, I heard everything.
Okay.
So I think for the audience it was fine. So ironically, like
No, but the speakers all face out, and then they bounce off
I
and
think that
come
was
back.
it, yeah.
Well, yes,
Sound.
so also, I mean, that, I don't think that is their final configuration of the audio system in there. Maybe I'm wrong, but I was under the impression that they were having to fudge some stuff to make everything work. So it could be that, you know, it was just less than.
It might
It
be
wasn't
bad
big,
even
yeah.
I was thinking, man, what are the performers gonna do? Because I'm not hearing this that well. Okay.
So will there be an opportunity to discuss the regional agreement specifically, or?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, I think that your board and the two boards in the other towns are really gotta like push that. If there's something that, and so I included in here, you know, page 53 is Archie's notes. They circulated back, you know, about a month ago, and
So has our FC made any comments?
well, no, because they were due to
They were
meet
gonna
last
do it then?
Tuesday.
Okay.
They're now meeting next Wednesday, so I assumed that whatever your board would talk about tonight, you'd probably still be talking about in 2 weeks with regard to the Kentucky agreement. So I'd like to tell FinCom that next Wednesday, when they meet on the 16th, would be the night for them to coalesce around whatever comments they want to offer, so that you can have that input 2 weeks from tonight, on the 21st.
So do we need to submit something in writing to you?
I think that if not to me, it's really more for you as a board to.
Okay, I mean, I have specific comments on the section 8A. I mean, I'm concerned that we're not getting, you know, the annual report on operation costs or the 5-year plan. You know, the specific things that are called for in this agreement are not being provided.
We did get 5 years of capital this year for the first time,
Okay.
in response to us pointing out that.
That was one of the
Right.
Wendy. That was one of the things that everybody, when we had this meeting this summer, like, where are these reports that we're supposed to get? We don't get.
Well, that was brought up
Yeah,
at the meeting.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
was kind of-
you actually just added to that to the capital plan, right, Angus? Didn't you? So I haven't looked at it yet,
Yeah,
but I saw your
yeah.
email earlier.
Yeah, and we got it about 10 days ago or so, and so we had to kind of get it into our format because their grid that I don't love the format they use. I've told them that, and it doesn't. But I think at this point that's just communication. We need to tell them the kind of the naming system, like they would list something, and I would have to understand, is that the same thing we're talking about, or is that a different project? And so we did the best we could in the interest of getting the capital program updated and circulated, but there's some things that need really a sit down with Pentucket to make sure we're talking about the same things. And also they seem to put more in like next year than I think realistically we would actually propose, but I just kind of took the numbers they
Okay.
put. So I think that will change.
So I would say just we got still a lot of stuff to go through here.
All right, so will these
In
comments?
the interest of brevity, let's see if our FinCom has some comments. We look at those.
Then add ours
We
to
all
that.
coalesce ours and come to a sort of the idea being that West Newbury has their agreed upon package, and then West Newbury and Merrimack and Groveland, we don't want to be 3 different people barking at them in different.
Right.
So that we come together. Our suggestions are unified, and then one of us meets with the people from the other towns, and we go in all together.
Okay, sounds good.
So I think where Archie did kind of put something out there, that would be a good thing to start from, to either add to that, or if there's things he said you don't agree
Yeah.
Say if we can use that as a jumping off point. And I do think that 2 weeks from tonight, it would be good to coalesce around whatever your comments are.
Okay.
Not really a hard deadline, but if there was something that was heading
The sooner we do it, though, then it's gonna be
that
Christmas
means
time, it's
reach
gonna
out
hard to
to
get
other
people
towns.
together from other towns, yeah.
I can send you the agreement in Word if you guys want that.
No,
Okay,
yeah,
okay, all right,
I just had that one section, that's just where my comments were.
okay.
Yeah, I think one of your comments, Archie, was, the only place I saw a reference to $1,000 was in, maintenance costs, and you had suggested that would be up, similar to the capital cost, that number should be up, from listing every $1,000, everything over $1,000 to up in that to a couple or 5 or some. I mean, we don't need to know every $1,000 expenditure for maintenance, I don't think.
Right.
Yeah.
And it will make less work for them, too.
Right. You know, it's funny, I think the AC is actually running in here.
Energy, please.
Yeah. Well, I'm chilly. I put my jacket on. It's 75 degrees outside.
Okay. Item H. I think there's really just one question. There's a part of the materials I shared was so you
There's
can
like
see.
so much stuff
Yeah.
about a path. I've never seen
That was part of why I
anything
included it. so you can
generated
see the
more
amount
paper
of time.
than
And-
this path.
And that is a curated collection. That is nowhere near comprehensive. So I wanted you to see, and I think Wendy, I think you've been on some of it, but it's unbelievable the way these projects take on a life of their own. So I think, and I met with Michelle today to make sure, and with Christine Wallace.
I want to see thousands of people working on this because that's how much work is generated.
I think the main question and where this is the select board is in land under your authority, and it was submitted kind of with your blessing, is this idea of a potential future connection to the Fallensby neighborhood. Do you want to keep some like nub on this boardwalk to facilitate a potential future connection or not?
So, I mean, I have a kind of a basic question. I've heard from a couple of butters and some other residents over the weekend. Why is this new design, what prompted the new design versus the 2 smaller boardwalks?
That would be, I think, a Brad Bashir question,
Okay.
because I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, because that is going to drive the cost up substantially, I would think. This new design is also on top of the water line for quite a long way. It's not going to be easy if there's a water break to take up the whole bridge, rather than.
It is segmented. They're the liftable segments.
But they're not like on the posts like we have in Riverbend, right? They're actually like the puncheon style.
Well, they'll be, I think the mud sills are essentially sitting on grade, and then the rails and the puncheon will be sitting on top of the mud sills.
Yeah, I'm not clear on why that design is preferable to just the 4x4 post style of bridge that we have in all the other conservation areas. I mean, if, and then that would answer your question, Agnes, about tying into Fallensby. If it was the original design, just join that path a little bit past the bridge. Maybe there's a good reason for it. When it was originally proposed to the Concom, it was a different design, 2 small bridges, and the rest was a stone dust pathway, an ADA compliant. So.
That's
Wendy, I know you
that's
had-
gonna drive up the cost a lot, isn't it?
What?
So much more.
I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like 200 feet of, or a little under 200 feet versus, it was a 40-foot and then a 70-foot bridge to go over the whole stream.
I know you'd had some correspondence with Greg Hockmuth, and you know we kicked around the idea of potentially having a separate agreement with him. I do feel like you know how I feel about the whole volunteer.
Did he send you one?
No,
Oh.
I don't think so. Unless I
This
get
was way back when we first talked about it. He said, yes,
okay. Then don't let me check
Okay.
afterwards because
Okay.
I get so inundated that
Yeah.
so I don't want. But you know, I feel like you know having someone under contract working. I guess it comes. This project went forward at a strange time. You know, it went forward kind of quickly.
Languished forever, and then it.
Well, no, I'm saying when it went to CPC, like it went through pretty quickly. It went through at the very same time as the Mill Pond one.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it kind of like, and some questions that were asked, but not really pressed in terms of like project management, who's really in charge here, were not really addressed. And I feel like that's part of how it's played out because you really have like design decisions being made by the chair of the Parks and Rec Commission, who's not getting his marching orders from this board, but you are the landowners. I mean, when I brought it to the select board I think it was January of 2020, was it 2020? It was whatever year this thing went in, to CPC. Must have been 2021. The select board did authorize the application to be submitted, which they needed to go to CPC, and the only stipulation was that the work be compliant with ADA and an Architectural Access Board. That was it. So the select board at that time, you know, chose, in my observation, to kind of be hands off and say, yeah, we're content for this to be proposed and go forward. And I don't think envision having like a real hands-on role with it. But now, you know, this current board may have a different idea of how, you know, if you want it done a certain way, you guys are the landowner, so you know, so I feel like we'd be better served if there was a direct relationship with the vendor doing the design work rather than those decisions being made. I don't know what process. I'm not at the table for those any more than you are.
Well, I know the DEP did raise some concerns about the style.
Yeah.
Bridge as well.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, there was a letter that was, I think I dropped it in there.
Yeah,
Still
because
one
it's
page
too
that
low.
they submitted.
Typically, the bridges are high enough with gaps between the planks so that light can get underneath and vegetation.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah, they had submitted a letter just last week that came through. And the wetlands flags are no longer.
Yeah.
Right. They can no longer be relied on. Yeah, that's page 6 of the second packet. Is the DEP comment.
I'm wondering, and I don't want to guess something, but I'm wondering if the change in design might partly have been related to if there are two crossings, then the area between the two crossings, the only way, you know, if you're counting on putting a stone dust or some kind of compactable material in there, there's a lot of traffic, a lot of vehicular traffic that would have to cross that. And is it possible it was consideration for trying not to have that much traffic across the wetlands?
What do you mean by vehicular?
You know, like either whatever is going to be carrying that material and placing that material would probably be.
Well, the crossings, were the wetlands. The rest of it
Right.
was buffer zone. So, and that's this is like a straight line on the Bryn side of the original design was across a small wetland area.
Yeah.
And then just kind of meandered through almost the middle until you get to the stream, and then there was an actual bridge over that. So I mean, that design was, prepared and submitted to, Concom. And then, the whole who owned it and maybe backed out, and so then it just kind of languished, but, maybe there's a really good reason. I don't know if Christine is aware, or maybe Michelle, but no. Or I can
there's
follow
been
up
quite a
with Brad.
sequence of emails over the course of 3 months or 4 months.
But they all presume that this is the design, so I guess I'm going back a little bit even further, saying,
Yeah.
why is this the design? This is
Yeah.
not, what they were talking about before.
Yeah.
Why are you smiling at me?
Well, it's just like a. We spend a lot of time going in circles. So, I mean, I feel like part of what goes on is, someone wants something to get done. We say, that's a great idea, but it's not this year's idea. We got bandwidth issues, whatever. So they go around us, and then it goes all this way, and now it's right back to. It's like it kind of. I think when we take on more than we have the bandwidth to do, things go on without our involvement, and then they come back, and then you want to be involved, and then it's like, what about it's like we either have to take charge of things, which historically we have not had the manpower to do. We can't do all of this, or we need to either let someone else do it, or we need to not do it at all. But I feel like if we're gonna assert, like the board I brought it to, this board with a prior, composition, didn't want to get real.
I have to say, I wasn't.
Yeah.
This thing doesn't interest me that
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
It's like a minor issue
Right.
compared to all the other things we deal with.
I think it's crazy the
But
amount
look
of
at
time.
look how much time it's taking of Wayne, Christine,
It's an
Michelle.
incredible amount of
your time.
time.
Yeah.
And this is what happens for a project that we said wasn't really urgent, it's. I mean, when we get to other things, that aren't where we want them, because there's not time. Well, it's partly because of all these other things that gobble up time. And what was the meeting I was at last week? And someone was, just don't get involved. It comes to me. I'm not trying to get involved with this. It keeps coming across my desk. Not just me personally, but just different people on staff. They just get drawn into it. So maybe the question of the nub or not the nub isn't the question. So I guess my question is, what's the right venue to get that answer? Is it this board or is it the CPC?
I don't know. I mean, I guess they could not come back to the CPC for more money and just ask for free cash at town meeting. That's one possibility. I don't know. I think I would like to at least reach out to Brad or to Greg and see why the design changed. Maybe that would be the first thing to do. There's, some plausible reason for it, then.
I'm not going to find it now, but I may have, a sequence of emails that explain that, from 4
I've been
months ago.
copied on.
I
a
don't
lot of
think.
them, 'cause
I
was
don't think.
originally-
No, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer.
Tim, Brad, and I were
Yeah.
carrying the design forward,
Yeah.
and then I stepped out when I joined the select board, and so and then Tim's no longer involved, so it was, I think, Brad and whoever.
I think Brad gave Greg the marching orders on the
Okay.
design, and I don't know what his rationale. He may
Yeah,
have a
they
very
reached
good
out to
idea
that.
or a very good reason for it.
Well, it's on hold anyway because the wetland flags have to be redone, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll
Yeah, and I
check
think
that.
I'll check my inbox as to whether there was something from Greg a while back that either I'm forgetting or maybe I.
Yeah, he said he would send it directly, and I wasn't copied on it,
Yeah.
which I was a little surprised at.
Yeah. I'll check. He may have, and it may have come in, on my first day on the Cape, and by the time I got back, it was 600
Buried.
emails back. So I'll check on that.
Alright, we still got a lot of stuff to do.
That was supposed to be a short one.
I tried to put this
Yeah.
last, I guess you didn't put it last. Whetstone.
Okay, so item I is really basically to effectuate what we talked about in executive session of the proposal to increase the hours for DPW support and to expand responsibilities and to effectively transfer budgeted hours from the select board operating salary wages budget. So I think that was what I was thinking when I had.
Yeah, so do we wanna vote on that?
I think so, where it's a
Okay.
mid-year, and it differs from the
Actual budget.
yeah, right. I think it would be good to have,
What page you on right now?
well, there's not
From-
actually anything.
From what, from
Open
this.
session.
just-
Okay,
just-
okay, yeah.
Uh, Go ahead. So we gonna do version 3, was that what we're gonna do, or?
Yeah, and I mean, I think what I'm looking for is basically on the, version 3, yeah.
Okay.
So to basically transfer budgeted funds from the select board salaries and wages, I mean, not formally transfer, we can't do that.
But effectively.
Effectively, into the, public works, salary and wages budget.
Okay, yeah, so I would move that we, I'll quote, effectively move the, so I guess I'm not sure what the amount of the the amount of the effective transfer. works out.
I don't think we
Move
need
the
to do that.
hours, just
Yeah, I
say the
think we're
hours.
talking about the
Okay,
hours.
so
I
that's,
think.
6 hours, of planning, 34 hours applied to DPW. And then.
And reducing the 15 from the select board.
The 22
That's
from the
22.
select board.
The 22, okay.
So it's, wait. Okay,
So
22
they go
will be taken from,
15 to 34 on
Yeah.
DPW hours per week, and go from 22 to 0 for select board hours per week.
that's a motion.
Like 15 to,
Second.
From increase from 15 to 34 in
so
DPW.
that's 19 hours.
Yeah, and to reduce by
22
22 hours the select board budget,
And so why don't those two numbers match?
because of the rate.
Okay.
All those in
Okay.
favor?
Aye.
Alright.
Thank you. Yeah, because one was 43 hours total before, and 40 hours now.
All right, and yeah, I had put it, that salary, the thing you voted at the end of June, that's what I marked up or revised, since that was kind of voted based on certain numbers, or certain, hours.
Thanks, Rick.
I just wanted to formalize the
That's
change.
pretty clumsy on my part.
No, it's good.
Okay, item J, I had, handed out, a paper handout, earlier. So. Yes, I did. Okay.
So I would make a motion, this is related to, employees requesting,
Vacation care.
usage of unexpended, unused FY 22 vacation accruals. Normally those would be expired at this point, but with the requests and I would make a motion that we allow carry forward of the FY 22 unexpended vacation hours through December 7th.
Second.
That's a full month. All those in favor? Aye.
Fine.
All right, we will notify everybody. Thank you. I know that will be well appreciated. Thank you.
Request for early closure of library on the day before Thanksgiving.
And it says library, but it's effectively town office as well. It's the way it's gone, and Archie, I'd be interested in your recollection before I got here, but I think when I got here, it was kind of like it was a full day, but then on the day of, sometimes a note would be sent around that, hey, we're gonna close early today.
Yeah,
It
we
wasn't
kind of like did it literally on the day.
Right.
You can bail now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of, I think, I don't have exact memory, but I think my first year or two, maybe even more, I think it was kind of like that, like the day of, it's a work day, and then it's like, oh, hey, it's pretty quiet, everyone can go home at 2, or that kind of thing. It wasn't something that was like booked ahead. Similar with Christmas Eve, similar with New Year's Eve. And so I guess that's the question is, do we want to keep it informal, or do we want to formalize it, or do we not want to do it at all? I was talking to Jenny about it. She said in Tewksbury it was handled exactly like this, more informal, where it was not on the calendar. It was the day of that an announcement was sent out, which, you know, from an employee standpoint, I wouldn't really like, because you can't plan ahead. But from a management standpoint, I don't totally understand that approach. Partly because of potential union implications.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you're codifying something that could. Well, okay, we want and someone working on those hours that are not official. Well, then that's going to be, time and a half. Is that a formal holiday, and therefore other members of the department get it? It's just
right.
As a union thing, I favor keeping it informal.
Yeah, I agree with
think that's smart. I also think if it's, let's say Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve is on a Friday, and many staff don't work on Friday at all, and even those that do, unless they're public works or public safety, the workday ends at noon. And so let's say Christmas Eve is a Friday, but people have become accustomed to Christmas Eve being effectively, well, and then what? Are they looking for time off on Thursday? And I promise you, these questions will come across my desk. I promise you that. So that's why I'm trying to kind of just get clear. I don't want to, be a Scrooge here, but I feel like it's kind of fairly steadily each season become more and more of an entitlement.
It's like
to where
expected and
to where it's now, we have a stated policy that says X in terms of holidays, but in practice it's sliding quickly.
Well, I think if we want to follow the policy, then we should not be making last minute decisions to give people the day off. I mean, then you're setting up the expectation. If we have our holiday policy, let's just stick to it.
Mm-hmm. And that's, what Jenny said, the way it was in Tewksbury is if someone, people might come into work on Wednesday morning before Thanksgiving, and they would very often get told they can leave at 1 or 2 or whatever time it was. But if somebody who didn't like that chose to take the day off on Wednesday, they would be charged with a whole day, because when the day started, it would have been expected it would have been a whole day, and you could see that could cause issues too. So I totally, we all have family, we all have, whether it's travel or you're hosting or whatever. Working that full day Wednesday, not everyone wants to do it. I get that, but I kind of thought it was nice when it was not assured, but it was kind of a nice little bonus that, hey, we get to leave early, or
that's kind of what I do in my business.
But if you do that once or twice, then people expect it. That's just human nature, right? so that, I think that's what's creating this situation.
Well, how much of a, I mean, has it become a problem? How much is it actually a problem?
Is what a problem?
That people are expecting it and.
Well, it's just, if I'm asked a question, as I have been, I don't know how to answer the question as to whether we're gonna close early or not. But I'm very keenly aware that if we do that, we formalize and we start doing it, every year, the unions will definitely be asserting that that is effectively a holiday, and therefore they're entitled to it too. And so, we're in a time where, maybe one day isn't a big cost driver, but you're getting into potentially 3 days. And if you start multiplying that around by every department, and potentially it becoming a union issue with time and a half, where people get,
That's when it's crazy.
It's not a budget buster, but if we, I'd like to think I try to treat every expense as a, whether it's a relatively small or relatively large, it's public money, it's taxpayer money, and I just don't know a lot of, employers where people just, 12 holidays is a good benefit. It's a very good benefit. And,
Well, it's been a long time for me since I worked for another company, for anything other than myself. But back when I did, I recall a similar thing on Thanksgiving. Somebody, my manager would come into my office and say, "Why don't you get out of here?"
Yeah.
And you didn't argue with that. And
Right.
So I don't know.
Yes, you did, Rick. You wanted to stay. Okay, so what's our issue then? What do we want to do here?
Well, so the question's been asked, so we need to answer. Is it?
Don't you say you don't know?
Yeah, or I guess you as a board could say, look, it's not in the policy, and then it's more on me. But then I would feel like if I allow it, then I've somehow crossed your intent.
It's challenging because not everybody works the same hours and the same days.
It's very
really hard to make it equitable.
And it's not. That's right. It's not equitable, and it's not. That can't be, the goal, especially when you're dealing with full-time and part-time. But even full-time, different people have different shifts. Right. If DPW is working 7 to 3, a 2 o'clock closure isn't that great a benefit to them compared to someone who's working until 4:30, or a library employee maybe working until 7 p.m.
Yeah.
It's not ever going to be equitable with an organization like this where people have different schedules.
I think it should personally. I think it should continue to be a call on the day, and life isn't always perfect.
Yeah, I would make a motion that the town manager at his discretion makes the call on that day.
And so, what about employees that don't report to the town manager? Are they still subject to his dismissal?
The only question I have would be library, where it's a separate physical facility. But I think that the language in the act is very broad in terms of personnel administration.
And it's kind of like a snow time.
Yeah, that's how
snow
they
emergency.
Right. That's how we have treated it in the past. It's like a snow.
So this is only non-essential. So like the police are not being.
Correct.
Okay.
No more policies.
Well, if you're not going to have policies, an informal policy is just as bad as a formal policy. Are we in discussion?
I haven't heard a second.
It is. There has been a motion. There has been a second.
Has it been seconded?
There hasn't been a second.
There's no
yeah,
second.
Archie made a motion. but there's not been a second.
Oh,
Yeah.
I second, okay, for some reason I envisioned, I thought I might have made a motion.
No,
I think I agreed, I think I said before you made your motion, what you made the
Oh,
motion
boy,
to.
this is
bad.
That's what, we're apparently getting a little punchy as we get.
Yeah,
late.
I feel like we should just stick with the policy. I think that's the cleanest way to handle it.
And then everyone just works their scheduled hours. But what about like the library? If they're open till 7 on a Wednesday? I mean, if someone's scheduled, if not scheduled to work, I mean, couldn't the library close at 3 or whenever they want to close? It's a matter of do people still get paid? That's the issue. And we've heard a lot from them about it's hard to fill Saturdays. It's hard to fill all the shifts. Well, if someone doesn't like that their hours were shorted on Wednesday, they can pick up a Saturday. I don't know. It's a part-time job. It's not you're not entitled to a certain number of hours a week. Anyhow, there was a motion, a second.
Yeah, all right.
Would your position be just everyone works the regular?
I just think that's cleaner. I think
It
this
is cleaner.
Really
But it is
motivating.
cleaner,
It is cleaner.
there's no question, it's cleaner.
Yeah, I'm all for clean.
As I said, life's not perfect.
All right.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye. So it basically leaves it up to your discretion,
Okay,
right?
thank you.
I'm clarifying, is that what it means?
Yes.
What I just
yeah.
voted for?
The town manager makes the call. That's
All right.
that's what I wrote down. So that's what I heard Archie say. So L, M, and N are all 3 different union contracts, but it's the same issue before you. You had agreed to the terms of the MOU. It's taken some time to get that codified into the contract. The union had sent markup contracts. I sent them back last week. I got some comments back from Ken this morning, just one change per one in each of the 3. I went through each of those against my notes. I agreed with everything he said. So if you're comfortable, I would ask for a vote to approve, to sign the contracts once those 3 items that Ken flagged this morning are built in, at which point I'll present you a clean copy for you to sign. It just would mean that you could sign it without the need for another meeting.
Okay.
And if you're not comfortable with that, let's table it. But if you are,
Well, I'm gonna make a motion that we sign the dispatch union that we approve and sign, or be prepared to sign when the final copy is available, the dispatch union contract, the police union contract, the highway union contract.
Second. I went through the numbers. I didn't see any problems. The best I could. Yeah.
Well, I read the contracts and I saw 2 of the, hadn't picked up the 3rd one, but I saw 2 of the same things that Ken had noted.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I don't remember, I didn't go back and look for the 3rd one, but
So were all of your comments addressed in the red line?
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And so this is all what we've already approved?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just the sequence.
Just to make sure that the numbers, because you don't know that a little mistake can make a big difference. So
Well, and it's also this MOA that Mike McCarron and I always felt was like, we didn't like it.
it's
We'd
a make
rather you
work
agree to
project. It
terms,
seems like
you do a red line contract, you execute the contract. That's how Mike and I would have liked to do it. The union really likes having an MOA. I don't know why.
But they want you to do all the work.
Yes, so it creates work to memorialize all the terms. You still don't have an amended contract. So as you know, these MOAs have been done for quite a while. And then it takes some amount of time. And when Mike was here, he would help do the
I think they
lines.
like to show that
There are other bargaining units and other
look,
towns.
this is the change. Look at all the stuff we got for you. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is more, which shows up better on the MOU than on the actual contract.
Yeah, so I did go through meticulously it's all good. There were those one item in each of them that Ken flagged, and I went through those today to make sure I agreed with everything he flagged, and it did all line up. There was one I wasn't quite sure about, and then I found an old file, and it lined up exactly. It was to what he was saying.
So
It was a 1,700 for the initial first year.
Well, that was the one that I noticed at first.
Yeah. So, and that was correct. That was agreed.
So KP,
No. No.
who's KP commenting?
I don't know. It's not KP. It's not KP law.
Okay.
It's I think that would be.
There were several but it didn't say what the comments were, but there was a.
Yeah, no, I saw that too. I think those are like a vestige of the Word document.
Okay.
There, I think. Yeah, I know what you mean there, but no, these. My advice would be for our next bargaining that we do have town council involved, but where McCarran was involved with the negotiating of all of these, I never got KP involved because it seemed like it would have taken so much of their time to get up to speed, and it would have cost money, obviously. I felt like, they were all effectively negotiated while McCarran was either here or right after he left. So that's where it there wasn't a normal legal involvement with this stage of it.
Okay.
So,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great. Thank you very much. That's been on my punch list for a while, so it'll be good to get that.
So, I apologize in advance. Working through all this, I didn't even look at the minutes. I ran out of time. So I don't know if anybody else has.
I did.
I did.
Okay. I can understand.
So it's.
First I was like, wait a minute.
This happened the same thing 2 weeks or last
I'm
week.
like, what?
I think she
what?
does it on purpose.
She was joking about that. Yeah.
So I did have too bad Jim's not here, but under the discussion of sodas and sailors, so the first option was to stabilize it. So the report was actually in here, right? So the first option was what we called mothball, and then the second option was the $850,000 one. So there's just one of the options is missing.
So
Her memo is in here somewhere.
Yeah,
I don't remember what part of it.
Yeah, it was in the
So she didn't give a price, but she did say that one option is to mothball it.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So the
I didn't
second
find
option-
a price. Yeah.
The second option is what's here. So maybe just a sentence saying that one
What
option
page
is to
you-
mothball it.
page
Page 117.
Yeah, and what Wendy's referring to is the August 30, 2021 memo, which is page 30. It does, outlines the first option is mothball, and the second is the 850. So
Yeah, so if that can just be.
this kind of conflates the options a bit.
And then there was another comment that was assigned to me that I didn't understand. So on page 118, the paragraph that starts Blake Seal appeared before the select board. The last sentence says, Reed commented that some residents had suggested to demolish the building with the knowledge that it was a memorial. So I'm not sure what that. So, I mean, it could just be struck. I don't think it's particularly helpful in the discussion. That was all I had on those. Did you have anything, Archie?
I'm still finding
Do you know how many more sets of minutes she has of the making up?
It's like you can count on one hand.
I mean,
We're,
must be
we're
getting
very, very close.
That's
Yeah,
great.
she's really doing a great
Yeah,
job.
that's great.
I'm good.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I move to accept the minutes of October 25th, 2021 as amended.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain since I haven't read the whole completely.
I didn't have anything on October 3rd, did you?
No, that one was pretty
That's
straightforward.
pretty
Yeah.
short. All right, I move to accept the minutes of October 3rd, 2022.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just on, let's see, go back to. Okay,
All right, so under updates, I haven't finished the job descriptions yet. I'm bugging away, and I'm going to try to get them around tomorrow. I feel like I am that close. There's also a really important piece of that with the proposed groupings that Collins Center had sent, which I think I shared with you guys a month or so ago. I spent a little time with that last week, and I do have some changes I'd like to see to that. What I'd recommend is if we can put that on for the special meeting next Monday, by which point I hope to be able to report that the job descriptions have been sent and set out a timeline. I don't think that December 5th is going to be realistic, because even if they do go out tomorrow, it's just not enough time. So I think the 19th is really like the last, which I'd hope to get it further ahead of the holidays, just because I think it is better. But I just don't think the 5th is going to give people enough time to review the job descriptions. But I think we can make headway on the classifications, the groupings, and looking at the comparable wages. So if we could put that on a week from tonight, and then just push it. But
I had gone, when we first discussed it, I'd gone through and come up with a proposal. Do you want to look at it? Or?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's great. And I forget if that's what you had shared with me or not.
No.
Okay. Yeah, that would be terrific. By all means, yeah. Next one, this is just a minor change, but this item Q on page 123, I didn't include the same memo because I hadn't changed the memo, but I changed the appendix, and I will end up circulating a new memo, just because I think that's like a good reference, the appointing authority one. But I just wanted to note, under the library, in the former one, I had said that the Board of Library Trustees makes all appointments, but in practice, that's not how it goes. The library director actually makes the appointments other than of the director, which is, so I think under Mass General Law, it was the board's authority, but they delegated that by putting it specifically into the director's job description. So that's just a housekeeping thing. Corinne had clarified that, so I wanted to just make document that. Letter R, the capital improvement program. I did circulate that draft earlier today. I think it's in really good shape to start the season. It's definitely going to change over the next 4 or 5 months, but I think we're at a really good starting point, and I think better than we've ever been over the last few years this time of year. So, I think when we get to, I don't know when the board wants to start. I mean, you have it, so you can get me comments anytime you want, but, like I said in the email to the CIC, it's typically this board that's going to decide which of the FY24 projects you want to bring forward. So you might want to take a look at those in particular, and understand what's proposed and why, and or get more information.
Where's that, Angus?
I sent it around about like 1:30 or so this afternoon.
There was 500 pages to read. I couldn't read
And this
more.
was 114 pages, I think is what it is. So. Plus the financing part of it. So, but we've got capital meeting this Thursday evening, and Wayne will be there for that. Next item, Page School Feasibility Work Group. I thought last week's meeting, I thought was a really good start to that.
Yep.
We had basically full participation. We've got a site visit tomorrow at 11:30. We'll be walking all through the school, getting a guided tour from Greg Haddon, and we'll get some video footage of that as well, because looking ahead, we'd like to see like a short, either one or maybe a series of informational videos so people can kind of see with their own eyes what some of the challenges that we face there. But I think that's off to a good start, and that working group will be making a recommendation to this board at one of the December meetings regarding scope of work for the study. I think people were it was a very positive meeting last Tuesday. I think it went really well.
So one person was remote, or?
Nathan couldn't be there. Greg Haddon was remote.
Sam was remote. Sam was remote.
Oh, Sam Jocelyn was remote. Yeah, but Nathan was the only one who was not there.
Okay.
And I sent him the meeting video,
Mhm.
so that and I didn't hear back, but I'm sure at some point he'll watch it if he hasn't already.
So will he be able to attend the site walk? Probably
Christine's
not.
been coordinating that. I doubt it. I doubt that midday is going to be a good time for him.
Yeah.
So
That's too bad.
yeah, but it is. I do know that at least in Pentucket, it's Teacher Development Day with Voting Day.
Oh,
So I don't know if he happens to not have classes tomorrow. Maybe he will be there. But Christine's been doing the logistics on that, so I'll just show up. Item T is Jim's report, and item U, Green Communities report, was submitted last late Thursday, ahead of the deadline on Friday. And Rick, do you just want to share a little bit about how it was different this year? And I think it certainly seemed like it's going in a good direction with staff.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was great having Caitlin helping. It's just a lot of detail stuff, and you have to sort through and make sure everything makes sense and construct a narrative that, in this particular case, trying to use that as a secondary means of convincing them that they should issue us or award us the grant. It was interesting that this building actually, which had 2 years ago, the HVAC controls upgrade, we had fiscal year comparisons, because that's the way the data is shown up in Mass Energy Insights. And it would appear based on 1 year's numbers which were weather normalized, that the changes made a lot more of a difference than I would have ever expected. So that was good.
Wow.
Yeah. You always wonder, if the data was based on how, where you actually take your readings for data and stuff. And there were some glitches, but in general, it appeared as though almost 3 times as much energy was saved as you would have expected. So,
wow, that's a lot.
yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
What happens on the weekends, Rick? Does the AC crank on Sunday morning?
No. Everything goes to there are sort of unoccupied modes or setback modes. So both for heat and for air conditioning. So it used to be this building would be tweaked at the beginning of each season.
It used to be that you'd come in on the weekend and it's freezing in here in the middle of the summer and it's unnecessary.
Yeah. So it doesn't work that way now.
Okay.
Wayne has actually tweaked every single office that is individually controllable to match the comfort level of the person who's in that office, which, you know, apparently people are quite happy with, you know, their comfort level. At least most people are quite happy with their level of comfort in their space now, and it's kind of matched to the feedback they've given to Wayne. So that's pretty, you know, that is part of the reason
You cannot do in a business. That's one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
But that's part of the reason why the savings are better than anticipated, I think. Yeah, but it used to be the building ran steady state, you know. Heating season it was 73 degrees, cooling season it was 68 degrees. It doesn't make sense that it would be done that way, but that's the way people generally do it, you know. And that was 24/7. So it's not done that way now.
Good.
Okay, so we will have a meeting a week from tonight. It's not gonna be a full regular meeting, but we will have at least one open session item with the wage study. And we may, I'll work with Archie, and maybe one or two others on open session, as well as the executive session. So that'll be, you know, on Zoom and televised just like a normal meeting. It just won't be a full length agenda.
Yep.
Anybody have items for future agendas? I just don't remember. So where do we stand with the design on Mill Pond? What ultimately happened?
So I had the same question. So I reached out.
Am I forgetting something?
No, you're not. You're
It's
not
just
forgetting
ironic
anything.
that Angus sent out an email just recently.
Yeah, just I think on Saturday, or late last week. Yeah, because I was looking ahead at. So this each of the Mill Pond, open space, and Park and Rec designated like a person.
Right. So
And
what
there's a bit
happened with that?
So it sounds like there's just a difference of opinion, and so I sent something to all of them, and I got a note back, and then I sent a note just to the one person who responded to say, you know, is this the gist of the issue? And I think that it would be helpful if they as a group gave a recommendation, or if there's two different points of view, that's fine too. But I said I'd like to get something on one of the board agendas in December, ideally the 5th, so that you can hear from each of those three groups as to what they think you should do, and then you guys can decide. But I think it seems to come down a lot to whether it should be phased or not phased, but I think there's more to it than that. You know, whether the focus ought to simply be improve the accessibility of a new and expanded trail around to the south of the pond, or, you know, or whether this idea of relocating the parking and kind of reclaiming the waterfront should be part of the plan at all. But I think there's more to it than that.
So we're not going to really get a consensus of the working group.
It does not seem like it.
Yeah.
So
I don't know
the
if
ball
that was-
is back.
right, but that didn't really work out too well.
It didn't seem to.
Okay.
Is that anything we ought to talk about more now, or
No, I
No.
mean, I think going back to when the whole thing started, you know, I think you were chair,
yeah,
and we talked about that question of, you know, what if at the end of the day there's not consensus? Whose decision is it? And you know, that's kind of where we are.
yeah.
And I think it is. You know, what I told people at that time, the designer asked me that question. I said, you know, the board has care and custody. Anything they do is subject to Greenbelt approval. And I said, I don't think the board's going to bring anything forward unless there's broad support for it. So whatever it takes to get there, that might take time, or I don't know. But I did, you know, you may have seen a notice on the Mass Trails grant round. I don't know if that came through any of your emails, but I had talked to Brad about that a month ago, and he said he felt that was like a next year grant. He
So I sent an email to Angus, which I think you were gonna probably put on the agenda for 2 weeks from now, Nick, about the pricing on the
Yes, yeah.
charging stations. And, I've thought about that more, and and so this is not to really make any conclusions at this point, but I just wanted to sort of float out a philosophical point that the cost of energy is going up. My thought was to Angus is that we shouldn't be subsidizing, although I certainly want to incentivize and, encourage people to make the transition to electric vehicles when they can. But, saving, providing bargain pricing on charging didn't seem like it made sense. But it occurred to me that the town is actually going to be making more money. We're going to be, the increase in electric rates are going to be a revenue producer for the town based on the money we get for the energy generated, the credits we get for energy generated on the Main Street solar system. So I guess just when we talk about it next time, in the back of your mind, sort of think philosophically, if the town is actually benefiting by the fact that electric rates have gone up for everybody else, does it maybe make sense for us to retain our current rate?
So, I mean, you've shared like how many people are using it, right? Could we have an updated report for this discussion?
Yeah, we'll have to look at that. It's not that much usage.
Yeah.
It's not, and I'm trying to get a copy of the electric bill. I should get one, or for both of them. I haven't seen the electric bills yet for the accounts because I don't know the account numbers. Once I know the account numbers, then I have a couple of questions for the National Grid municipal rep. Anyway, it's just a different twist, and I was just thinking, well, that's the price of the power coming to that station. That's what should be reflected in the price that is charged. But then if the town is actually making more money because the price is high elsewhere, maybe that's a place where we ought to keep the incentive up. So there's something to think about.
Yeah, we get a monthly summary report of the usage.
I've seen it in a couple packets.
Yeah, every now and then I drop it in, but I get one every month, and I typically send it off to Rick. Not every month, sometimes I forget, but pretty much I do. And I send it to Caitlin Gilbert as well, because she's receiving the money, so it gives her something to tie the numbers to. So it'd be a neat thing to like push out, for like social media, but it's just
One other thing that I thought of that sort of on a personal level and on a departmental level, being nice to know how the new police chief is, how he thinks things are going. And also, maybe an FY22 report on, as I've said before, a lot of times we used to get annual statistics on there were this many break-ins, there were this many, all those kinds of things. Traffic stops, this many speeding violations, that kind of thing. It's just kind of interesting information. We don't have to do anything with it, but just they have those reports, but I haven't seen one in years, and I have asked for them several times and never got them, and it might be maybe the new chief would be responsive to that. Because they have to have the statistics to report them to the FBI and stuff. That those numbers exist.
I think somewhere it's published that we're supposed to get. I thought it was even quarterly reports.
I remember talking about this.
Yeah,
I know, but you put it in the updated job description.
Yeah,
I think that's what you're thinking of.
Yeah.
So I'll follow up with Mike, and just because I know he's willing to do that.
Sure.
So I've made a note of that. just for your calendar, we're aiming for the tax rate hearing 2 weeks from tonight, the 21st. 2 weeks after that, we'll have the FY24 budget kind of policy setting. Also, 2 weeks from tonight, we've got the Newbury Port proposal, the AECom, and the mayor. Some other things. We've got the charging stations. I'll have a Middle Street Bridge update. We had a call with the consultant recently scheduled that had to be postponed because of the other new report thing, but we've got that scheduled for I think later this week, so I'll have a substantive update on that. Yeah, we've got on the 5th, we've got the FY24 budget direction. I want to talk about date for town meeting and try to pin that down. And we've confirmed with the auditor, the audit will be presented on the December 19th meeting. So we've got a few things coming down the road.
Motion to adjourn.